Welcome to each of you to today's 15th annual Fire Summit and also our 4th virtual Fire Summit. On behalf of the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, we want to welcome each of you for a day of professional development and learning that you can use immediately within your classroom, whether it's later today or even tomorrow. Today's sessions are going to span from preschool to the 12th grade. Although they'll be divided from preschool to the 5th grade and also another streaming segment on grades 6 through 12, we will have things like learning and innovation. We'll be focusing on professional action networks, modern classroom, building it forward with the tiny homes. The main thing that we really want to share, regardless what field, what profession, whether you're in private industry or you're an educator, each of us want to learn from the best. Who's the other all-stars? Who's the other high-performing colleagues that we have within our area across the state, and what are they doing? What are they doing to improve each and every day? Well, today, the goal of our Fire Summit is to enlighten you as to what the best and the brightest, the most innovative students and educators are doing now. And this is so important. It's probably more important than any other time in history because we're coming out of a worldwide pandemic. You probably had many other things to focus on. So now today, you get to see what the best and the brightest students and educators are doing within our area to help the most important person improve, and that's you.
Welcome to the 15th Fire Summit. This is our 4th virtual one. We are so excited that you're going to be watching our Learning Innovation Grant recipients as they present what they're going to be doing to address their problem of practice. This fall, they will be addressing the problem of practice that they identified in their grant application. And they'll tell us how they're going to address that. And then in the spring, they will come back and they will tell us how it worked and was it successful or was it not, and what are they going to change to help it to be better. The session you're about to view is of teachers teaching grades 6 through 12. Enjoy.
Hello, my name is Cindy Artrip and I am from Daff Allen Central Elementary, where I teach kindergarten through 8th grade art, and my project is called Animating Art. I'll take you through my slideshow really quick. All right, so my educational problem is that learning art history can be kind of boring for my students, and I want to be able to keep them better engaged. So in order to pique their interest more during art history lessons, I want to introduce them to some new and exciting ways to learn. I feel that this will be more intriguing for them to learn about things that they may not otherwise have piqued their interest. So my questions are, what methods could I implement to make learning art history more fun? How can I successfully implement and incorporate STEM with art? What products are available to incorporate STEAM into my art class? And how can students bring their artwork to life? And how will I assess what my students have learned? So research shows that technology is becoming the most innovative and fast-growing industry in our society. By combining the arts with the sciences, we create a healthy balance of education, exploration, creativity, and academic progress. By igniting both sides of the brain, the left, which is analytical thinking, and the right, which is the imaginative thinking side, we can create some of the best thinkers, creators, and of our future generation. STEAM is a mix of elements from science, technology, art, and engineering, and math that create critical thinkers, problem solvers, and innovators of our future. Recognizing that children learn what they are excited about, my focus will be to offer hands-on lessons that utilize the process of visualizing, synthesizing, and expressing through a wide variety of media. So my plan of action How will I make learning art history fun? Students will get to select a favorite artist and work of art that they find interesting. They will research, create, and bring an artwork to life by using Hummingbird Bit Kit and coding through JavaScript. Animating art, project outline and implementation is my students will bring a famous artwork to life. The criteria is the things that the students' projects must do, which will be based on a work of art, use an LED or a motor, and stand on its own. They can also use a combination of LEDs and motors, and you will see a sample of that in just a moment. The constraints and limits on the student projects is they must use supplies that they have around the house or in the classroom. We want to be able to use recyclables. That way we cut back on waste. And for a fun bonus challenge, I want the students to try to use similar projects to their original artist and limit the size of the project to about the size of a shoebox. That way we have plenty of room in the classroom to support that. Some of the resources needed include the Hummingbird Bit Kits from BirdBrain Technologies. We need access to MakeCode and JavaScript and classroom supplies such as cardboard boxes, scissors, cutting blade, mats, hot glue, tape, paper cups, popsicle sticks, paper clips, straws, rubber bands, batteries, just a little bit of everything recyclable or that we already have available in the classroom. Who is involved and how? So I do plan to implement this lesson with my 8th grade middle school students. Approximately 30 students will be working on this project in small groups. Students will learn to use MakeCode and JavaScript to program the Hummingbird Bit Kit in order to bring a work of art to life. The timeline for the project, we will begin this project the next quarter, which starts next week. Students will research artists and artwork to choose a painting to replicate. And students will recreate a 2-dimensional painting as a 3-dimensional kinetic art form using various art techniques appropriate to their sculpture. Beginning in the 3rd quarter, students will learn how to use the MakeCode and implement their learning to add motion and light to their creations using the Hummingbird Robotics Kit. Students will defend how they chose to incorporate light and motion based on the features of their artwork that they chose. So here's a work sample that I created during a training where I learned to use the Hummingbird Kit. I have presented my sample to my students and asked for their input and opinions. Students showed great interest in learning how to create animated artworks. I will assess student learning by asking questions and by having students journal their process. And student success will be measured by completion of a successful work that meets the stated criteria. So this is my little tribute to Bob Ross. It's kind of a little fun project that I did. I incorporated the Hummingbird Bit Kit with some servo motors and the blinking lights. So let me play this for you and you can get an idea of what animating art looks like. All right, there you have that. The students loved the Bob Ross tribute. All right, so in summary, my students are excited to learn about how to animate art. They are eager to begin research and planning for a project at hand, which leads me to believe that the plan will prove to be successful in making art history much less boring for students and a whole lot more fun.
Hello, FIRESummit. This is Andrew Baldwin from Belfry Middle School in Pike County, Kentucky. I teach 8th grade integrated science, and I have a project with Outdoor Greenhouse Classroom. And our question was, how will creating an interactive classroom foster a sense of responsibility as measured by individual journal entries and data collected through a log of hours and student surveys show an increase of test scores from the pre-test to post-test score data? So we're looking at how creating this interactive environment may help the test scores, same student, same test. See if working hands-on with the kids, being outdoors as much as possible, if that will help them with their test scores, make it more interesting for them. So our timeline breaks down like this. The fall of 2021, students take a pretest, and the fall of 2021, the seeds are planted and started indoors. We're getting ready to start that process right now. We have ordered our materials. We had to wait for it to get cold enough to necessitate a greenhouse so that we didn't get some false growth or get the greenhouse too hot. It's a prefabricated greenhouse. We'll talk a little more about that later in the presentation. In the winter of 2021, we will build and establish the greenhouse out on our school property. We have a place picked out for that here on campus. And the winter of 21 and 22, we're going to transplant those planted plants from their small containers and plant them into bigger containers or into fabricated shelving that we have in our greenhouse. And then we're going to plant more seeds to grow some various things. The spring of 2022, the plants are going to be harvested, and they've got a little project to do at the end with that they've chosen. And they're also going to take their post-test, and we're going to compare the data. And then we're all going to come back together here at the Fire Summit and talk about that. Our classroom will be a prefabricated greenhouse. We picked out one online that suited our needs. It was fairly large by the standards of most people's greenhouses that you're going to have in the backyard. I think it was like 15 by 21 and 7 feet high in the middle, so there's plenty of clearance above everybody's head. It's going to be a hands-on learning through the building of the classroom. Even though it's prefabricated, they're going to have to put it together. And they're also going to need to fabricate and secure all the structures on the inside. We got some lumber and some pallet lumber that we have acquired, and some staples and screws and things that we will be building some shelving and using some garden tools as well. And this will be outside here on our school campus, so they'll be able to go and do that throughout the school year, weather permitting. Once the greenhouse is up, weather doesn't matter, but might be a little delay here and there because of rain from day to day getting it put together. The plants that they'll grow, the students will select those. It's all the stuff that they wanted to grow. They'll have a variety of fruits and vegetables, and there'll be lots of flowers also. The kids have decided they wanted to do some flowers. We're going to use fresh potting soil to help foster the growth of the new plants. The area that we have selected for it is just a grassy area. It's been there since the 60s, undisturbed. So it's probably not really fertile for anything other than grass. So we decided to go with some potting soil. So we've got some tools, not only to build the structures that we'll need, but we got some hand tools to help mix up the soil and be able to pull weeds and things if something gets in there and starts growing. Students will use their own class time to take care of the plants with the tools that we purchased. I teach just about everybody in 8th grade, but only a handful of them will be in this particular class. We have a time set aside for that every day that they'll get to use that. Plus, if they get their work done, they need to go outside and work on something, they're more than welcome to do so with supervision. They're going to keep a time log, so we're going to see how much time each student gets to spend. Now, they won't just get to go freely to work on it as often as they would like. They're kids, so we got to keep an eye on them. And we're going to keep a time log on them and see how much they actually interact in the classroom and how much they actually do. The log of their time will be kept to see how much they're in the greenhouse and if there's any kind of correlation between that hands-on work and their test scores. We'll be looking for that collaboration. We'll be looking for that, hoping that this helps to grow an interest in science and maybe continue this on, since we have the materials now, be able to continue this on as often as we can for those kids that show an interest in science or maybe need a little boost in science. The students are taking a standardized test similar to the K-Prep before we begin, and they'll also be taking the same test after we finish the classroom work for the school year. The test results will be compared, and we'll see if there's any growth. There will be some collaboration. That's one of the neat things, is there'll be collaboration. They'll work with their classmates, but on a recent trip that my family and I took, we met some farmers in some other states, and they have offered to do some video conferencing. We've got some local farmers that we already have lined up that will do some in-person demonstrations if social distancing rules allow, and possibly some video conferencing. And we're also going to try to help incorporate the FMD classroom to allow them to care for some plants and bring them out to the classroom to give them a different experience as often as possible. Those kids love to get outside. They love to get out and do things, and I know they're going to love seeing their plants grow. So we wanted to help foster that bond between the students so that they're able to interact with one another and interact with folks from different classrooms and from around the country from different backgrounds. The data will be kept in daily journals, a log of the volunteer hours, of course, their test scores. We're also going to look at growth and harvest to see the ones that the students take care of. If we have, one student may pick a particular type of flower, so we want to make sure that they take and are responsible for that. We see if there's growth and harvest, or if the plant dies. And we only have so much space, and the soil's all similar, so there's not a whole lot of variables there with the growth as far as the sunlight and the heat and stuff. So we know it's going to be a lot about how they take care of it. We're going to keep track of that as well, just for the students themselves. And then we're also going to do a student satisfaction survey to see how well they feel like this was implemented and how well they feel like this helped impact their love for science. Current observations that I have, the students have gathered lots of information on the plants. They've selected a number of plants they wish to grow. We've selected out the greenhouse and gotten our tools ordered, just waiting on all of that to get together, and they've taken a pre-test. The group of kids that I have are great kids. They're excited about doing the greenhouse. They kind of chose this project. We allowed students to choose different projects, and this is one that I wasn't even sure I was going to get the grant, but they chose it anyway in hopes that we would get the grant, and we did. So we're moving forward with it. So it's kids that are interested in this kind of stuff. Upcoming changes that I know we'll be doing next cycle, we'll be building the greenhouse, planting and harvesting, taking care of the plants, and we're going to be doing the collaborative work. And then the final outcome will be the students wish to create things with their plants. They've decided that they want to do a salad, like a dinner, and have maybe some side dishes or a salad that the kids can give to either their parents or to the staff. We're not sure how much we're going to grow, how much, you never know how much you're going to be able to harvest. And they also talked about doing like some table centerpieces or some wreaths, maybe some bouquets of flowers with the flowers that they grow. Some kids are really interested in the different types of flowers, maybe even some wildflowers. So we're going to let them do whatever they want to with the stuff. This is their project. I'm just kind of guiding them and seeing how they learn from it, teaching a few lessons on it about gardening and about germination of seeds, and how a seed is actually an embryo and how it is part of sexual reproduction. We have a couple of lessons on that we'll be hitting, and I try to hit those every year, but this really puts that in action. And I can also use this with other classes throughout the year. I can use some of the information with them, which I always teach that.
I'm Lindsay Phillips. I'm a senior here at Belfry High School.
Hi, I'm Bailey Howard, and I'm a senior here at Belfry High School as well.
Our project is on the investigation of changes in the globe, and we will be doing this by using the System Toolkit and the ArcGIS maps.
So this is our research focus. Having this grant approved will enable us to learn and apply the multi-physics software from analytical graphics to perform complex analyses of ground, sea, air, and space platforms. We will share our results and findings in one integrated environment.
Using the software. Using the SDK system, this will enable us to design, build, test, and operate the satellites. We'll be able to predict the exact time of arrival at a point where we will be retrieving the data from aerospace, defense, telecommunications, and other industries. Using the ArcGIS software, we will map our retrieved data and use the ImageJ program to exactly predict the changes in our globe due to different calamities. We will also be learning how to troubleshoot the assembly and calibrate all of the components to achieve consistent results from our various trials. This is priceless knowledge that we will be able to carry with us into our future careers.
So these are our first steps. At first, we'll need to get accustomed to how the systems and programs work by learning all of the customizable toolbars, dockable maps, and 3D graphic windows. Each program has unique features that we'll be able to manipulate and control after learning the software. So this image shows what we can build using this software.
This is our action plan. We will create satellites, aircrafts, targets, and communication systems in the STK design space called Scenario. We will be able to design and manipulate all of these machines. Each object is necessary for collecting data from the ice caps in the North Pole using the Galileo satellite. We will be able to determine the time of duration of the satellites. We will also contact NASA and other agencies to provide the data so they will be able to map using the ArcGIS program.
So using this program, we will be able to look at surrounding populations of the ice caps. It is an extremely intelligent software system that will be very effective in our research. We will communicate with other scientists and engineers to aid in our understanding of the methods of collecting data and interpretations of their work. We will try to model the communication system between the satellite and the ground station by constructing cube satellite and using Arduino. We will construct explanations from scientific practices by presenting our work at conferences and other events. So these are our budget details. The total projected cost will be $1,000. The SDK Professional will be $150 per year. The ArcGIS program will be $100 for the year. Arduino and add-ons will be $300. Regulated power supply and electronic components will be $250, and the electronic tools and other necessary items will be $200.
This is our budget narrative. For our research, the STK and the ArcGIS programs will be purchased for this amount that we have allotted in the budget. This will help us build a path of satellites and retrieve data from the databases available at different agencies. The ArcGIS program will allow us to map and analyze the data that we receive from the satellite.
We'll be using the allotted funds in the budget to buy our Arduino set and other components in order to model the communication process between the satellite and the ground station. And power supply and electronic components will be required as well. A complete circuit consisting of wires, resistors, capacitors, and other electronic devices will be designed and built to have a successful receiver for the communication between the satellite and the ground station.
This is our project, nanocrystalline dye-sensitized solar cells by myself, Mason Lambert, Madison Sloan, and Joe Gold. Our goals for this project is to create dye-sensitized solar cells using the juice from different berries and fruits. And we're going to do that. When we do that, we're going to use that to capture solar energy and produce electricity because it's a lot more cost-effective and cheaper way of doing it.
The goal with this specific project is to create and trap solar energy using the juice from various fruits and berries. The original thought is to use blackberries, but different berries could bring various results. By using different juice to stain titanium dioxide with juice dye, we are hoping to measure electrical output captured within the slides of glass holding it together.
These are the materials that we use. We keep them hidden in our lab in a box, safely in our station. This is the experimental procedure. We had a booklet that came with our kit that we keep with it that has all the steps of what you need to do and goes further in depth of how each step is supposed to be carried out. So we just put the titles of each step that we have to follow.
This project has a straightforward goal of creating a dye-sensitized solar cell that will capture solar energy to produce electricity. Results may vary depending on the berry of choice for the experiment.
This year in SEAM, students from our class are mentoring the middle school students. The mentors are myself, Mason Lambert, Madison Sloan, Eric Smith, and Isaac Eli. We're focusing on the 8th graders, teaching them technology and chemicals. We're teaching them leadership and helping them to equip themselves with careers in the future. The projects that they are working on is building robots, synthesizing gold and silver nanoparticles,
using new herbs available in our region that can be used as a detection method for cancer.
My name is Davlin Sherrill, and I'm working on the robotic arm project along with other 8th graders, Victoria Dotson, Maddie Bevins, Ty Hackney, Olivia Long, along with our mentor, Mason Lambert. Our inspiration.
Our initial idea was to create a remote control bowling ball, but after doing more research, we decided that it would be better to do something else. We then decided to build a robotic arm. Our end goal is to build a small wall out of wooden crafted blocks.
The coding.
Before we began building the robot, it was necessary that we learn how to code. We used an Arduino starter kit to educate ourselves on how to code. The kit included a DVD and also other materials to help us with our work. Then we started our first project, which was to patternize small LED lights.
Work in progress.
The picture to the right shows our robotic arm, and we are currently in the process to check the functioning of the knobs that are connected for the operations for the robotic arm. And we have learned how to do many different things from this, and our Arduino DF robot kit will be writing codes to program the robotic arm. We will perform operations like picking up objects and laying it in different ways and directions.
We will be creating a 3D printed robot. This robot will be made by me, Jackson Irwin, Brandon Harrison, Logan Thompson, Logan Maynard, and our mentor, Eric Smith. Our goals for this project: we will be making a 4-wheeled robot with the similarity of R2-D2 from Star Wars. This will be controlled using a Bluetooth module from our phone. This can be achieved by using the app Dabble. The code from the Arduino will communicate with the app via Bluetooth, which will make it move. We will be learning coding using the Arduino software.
The shell of the robot was built first, and it's shown in the picture to the right there. We used Tinkercad and made a model of the shell of the robot, and we sliced the file using Cura. The file was then transferred to the SD card to insert it to the Industry 3D printer to print the shell. The print of our shell took 27 hours, which was the longest print in the lab so far. The dimensions of the print were, it was 5 inches long, 5.25 inches tall, and 0.5 centimeter thick. We'll be using a kit of parts shown on the right, those 5 pictures, and more for our robot to move. The kit of parts includes an Arduino Uno R3, DC motors, male and female wires, breadboard jumpers, power supply module, a prototype expansion module, and an HC05 Bluetooth module, and more. At present, we're learning to code the Arduino to perform a few functions for our robot.
This is the robotic arm edge made by Bailey Dingus, Mackenzie Dotto, Lexa Hurley, myself, Lacey Hayes, and Robert Smith, and we were mentored by Joseph Eli.
The significance of our project. The significance of our project is to assemble a robotic arm edge by connecting different parts and connecting motors. Controllers are used to command the gripper to open and close, motion of the wrist to 120 degrees, extension elbow range of 300 degrees. Controllers can be used to rotate the base to 270 degrees and motion to 180. The edge can reach vertically and horizontally to 15 and 12.6 feet respectively to inch and place a 100-gram object.
This is the process of work that we carried out to build the robotic arm edge and see our process from start to finish. You can also see the piece that we had to make.
We are planning to improve the robotic arm edge by providing wheels to the base using a motor so they can be moved to different places. We are working on to increase the size of the arm by 3D printing extension so the arm can be extended to pick or place things at further distances.
Nanoparticles Project 2021 to 2022 by the following 8th graders: Rayleigh Johnson, Heather Hatfield, Marielle Restar, Darby Thompson, Kendall Starr, and Meredith Justice, and our mentor at Madison Sloan. Overall goal.
Our overall goal is to be able to use many plant extracts to cap gold and silver nanoparticles. Capping is what stabilizes nanoparticles and inhibits overgrowth. We were able to test kudzu, sunflower, zucchini, and tomato, also bitter melon. However, we were only able to test the first 4 for both gold and silver nanoparticles. On the right, there's pictures that shows the final solution of gold and silver nanoparticles.
Recorded UV spectrum.
This recorded UV spectrum shows the absorbance at 410 nanometers and 520 nanometers. This provides confirmation about synthesis of gold and silver nanoparticles.
Our future goals are to help the environment by taking on invasive plants and using nanoparticles to cap them. We would also like to use nanoparticles to identify cancer cells in the body. Gold and silver nanoparticles can be used to cap many different extracts that we create.
Hey guys, this is Kathy Conley from Knott County, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my ARI project or grant proposal for this school year. And as you can see, the title of the project is Not in Color, and it is a community caring and collaboration project that involves writing and art and speaking, listening skills. It kind of covers the gamut in everything that I teach. And so I'm just going to give a little intro to our schools. Our superintendent is Mr. Brent Hoover, and our principals are Mr. Bobby Pollard and Mr. Jamie Couch. And I'm Miss Kathy Conley, and I teach English and Arts and Humanities here at Knott County Central. So as I was coming back this school year, as everyone in person, was a little nervous. I was a little apprehensive about how I could work with students who had been on basically at-home virtual learning for a year and 3 months. And so I just thought, what's going to be their big need? And I realized that it was very, very much academic. But before that, I realized that we needed to address the social, emotional part of learning. And it wasn't just for my students. Parents and people in the community, they were also wondering how and what students were going to get back into. And so I just came up with this question: how can we positively affect the social, emotional, and academic learning within our school and community? And here comes our project. It's called Not in Color, and it's basically going to be a coloring book that is in black and white, and it will be NOT in color until we put the color into it, and then it will become not in color. Here's our goals. The first goal that we have with this is to reduce anxiety and promote positive self-esteem in both school and community. Our second goal is to create a focus for students and community members. And then our third goal, foster more mindfulness within the school and community. So with this, we want to make people feel comfortable and communicate in a way that maybe they haven't before. Sometimes color can bring out different emotions, and the act of coloring, the old-fashioned pen to paper or crayon to paper, I think puts it in a different perspective sometimes and makes you slow down, and that fulfills goal 3. You know, be more mindful of what you say, who you are talking to, and what your goal is. So here are the materials that I asked for this project: Crayola colored pencils in assorted colors, and packs will be given to recipients of the completed book. I also ordered Crayola multicultural colored pencils, and they will also be given to recipients of the completed book. Lined travel journey notebooks, students and the individuals they choose will use these during the process. Black gel pens, obviously, they're going to use them during the process. We also are requesting a wireless all-in-one photo printer so that we can use this to print our final product in color, and the kids can see what it really is going to look like. Ink cartridges, of course, never can have too many, but I requested a couple extra. And then a printing order. We have a local printer here in Knott County, and we're hoping to get them on board and be funded to do 50 processed copies of our book. So here's our course of action. How are we going to put this together? How are we going to do this not in color coloring book? So first, students will nominate an individual that has positively impacted his or her community. Then a committee will choose 25 of these people to participate in this project. Then students will be given a permission form before beginning the project. And students should then begin researching their person of choice by conducting interviews with guided questions, either in person, digitally, or on the phone. And like I said, not everybody is comfortable being face to face. So we're going to be able to conduct our interviews digitally, on the phone, you know, however it works for the kid and the individual, we're making it work. And then once they have interviewed this individual and got to know them and found out about things that they do to help places in Knott County, different areas of Knott County, then they're going to complete a one-page feature article about this person. Of course, that will require a picture of that person. And I have a template that everyone's going to use, so it's all going to be equal and even. And then once that's done, then students will create a unique coloring page that highlights their individual. And it may be that they just have the individual with their name, with their outline of their face, when things in the background, or it may be that they just highlight a certain area of the county in which this person feels influential. It's going to be very open on this, okay? And so when you're holding the book, you will be actually having on one side the feature article and right beside of it, the picture of the person. So I think it's going to be cool. Here's some student focused objectives. And I found these in a research data project that was focused on our school and what we needed. This is what our kids needed. So I just borrowed them and here they are. Students will become stronger writers that focus on the identification of main idea and details. Students will be learning to meet expectations, accept criticism, and build a product that people will want. Students will practice skills in writing, editing, interviewing, and visual layout for publication. Students will become more involved within the school and community. I wish I could put that one in giant letters and red because I think that's the most important part. And the next one I think is just as important. Students will become leaders in community involvement. Many people who are not necessarily directly involved with the school might feel a desire to become part of the school, particularly alumni. Because I know a lot of people say, how can we give back? We want to help. This is one way that they can help and be highlighted. And so direct involvement, this is what I will do. The teacher will monitor throughout the entire interviewing, writing, editing, creating, etc. I will do everything I can to be there every moment that they are talking to a person, whether it be virtually or whatever. Students will be given guides and rubrics, which they must adhere to during the entire project. And then there will be post-project journal entries from both students and community members who are directly involved in Knott in Color. And the resources I've found to make this happen, there you can see them. It's a newspaper. This one is going to be a template of a feature article. This one is how reading rockets and newspapers help to enhance language arts skills. And then this one is information about the statistics and the overall health of adult coloring books on mental and social emotional learning. And so our final product will be a book, and we have not designed the cover yet. That's why I just pulled one off somewhere else. We haven't designed the cover yet. I'm going to let students kind of work on that. And we have not started publication yet. So this is just a little idea of what it's going to be like when it's finished. And I think in my proposal, I put something toward the end, like we hope to make every copy successful with some colorful language, color enhancement in pictures, and colorful smiles on many different faces. And so this is just a project of love and growth and experience. And I'll be really excited to see it come to fruition and us have hard copies to distribute in the spring.
Hello, everybody. My name is Charles Brennan Hackney, and I represent Eastridge. This is my second KVIC Learning Innovation Grant, and they've really helped me out every time I've done one. So again, I'd like to thank the people responsible at KVIC for having this. For this year's grant, I wanted to expand on the first one I had, so they kind of relate, and I'll go over that here in a second. But for my first KVIC grant, I titled it "A Evolution of the Arts." My problem of practice was kind of getting students to make the connection between art and technology, and that art wasn't just kind of this ancient thing, paintings and drawings, that it actually had a place in modern society, and that you could find viable, good careers designing and using art and being creative. So for this KVIC grant, I titled it "A Further Evolution of the Arts," and I delved a little bit deeper into that connection that I wanted to make in my first grant of getting students to understand how art and technology are related. So my problem of practice was showing students that connection between art and technology. Ever since I've taught this class, there seems to be a disconnect in students' minds that art is what art is and how it can be used in a broader sense. When I talk to students for the first time, they always consider art to be old pictures and paintings. It never dawns on them that technology, all the technology we use, is somehow connected to an artist or a designer or somebody that has a creative mind. And that's devices that we use every day. The cars that we drive, I mean, everything has its relation aesthetically to an artist. So, like I said, I've been trying to connect art and technology with these grants. And with every new evolution in technology, art changes too. That don't just apply to the production of art or the way art is viewed or shared or consumed and subsequently sold. It's constantly transforming. Technology has made the art far more accessible, just like with other aspects of modern life. The internet has allowed art to be consumed in a lot of different ways, and opened the industry to a wider and more diverse audience. A lot of museums showcase their collections online. The artists have all the tools they need at their fingertips to sell their own pieces, and it's often without the challenge that comes with running a physical exhibit. So it was very important to me to get these kids to connect that in their minds, that art can still be a viable career path for them. So with my previous years doing the KVIC grant versus this year, in my first KVIC grant, I had them design and implement with the 3D printer in the room, allowing students to make 3D objects from an art and design standpoint. Now, students got on the computer, used a computer program, completed 3D object with the equipment that I purchased from the grant, and then they would print it out. Pretty simple, but it was a very big leap for them in terms of understanding that, hey, I'm doing art and technology at the same time. So with this year's grant, I wanted students to use this new technology called 3D Doodler pens. Basically, it's having a 3D printer in your hand, and you can design while on the go what you want your 3D object to be. I purchased these with the KVIC funds to go a step further in the technological sense. This further connected and helped me resolve my problem of practice in connecting art and technology. And it really completed the process of creating a 3D design from the first step to its final completion. So the actual first step in that process was creating objects with the 3D pens. I had students watch a YouTube video over the pens, how to use them, some cool stuff that you could do with them, which I've hyperlinked into the PowerPoint presentation. So students will start by designing an object that can be created in a 3D space. They will bring the design to life using the 3D doodler pens. Now, we have not actually got to starting those, as they were on back order from Blick, and we just got them. So it will be very soon that we actually get to implementing this first step in the process. The second step will be scanning the objects into the computer using a Sprout computer that I actually have behind me. You can see it in the screen. It uses 3D scanner technology. It has a platform, as you can see from the picture, that you place your object on, and it gets scanned in. And this is where we can put the designs from the 3D doodler to prepare them as a 3D file on the computer. The final step will be using that 3D printer that I mentioned from my first KVEC grant, still using the supplies bought from it. So students will complete their design, they will make a 3D file, and then they will print those designs on the 3D printer using those supplies provided by my KVEC grant.
Hey everybody, I'm going to talk today about my innovation grant called A New Kind of Intelligence. I am Mark Harmon. I am a STEM instructor at Ashland Middle School. I teach various STEM classes, some computer science, some 3D modeling and printing, and then some just general STEM application classes. So my area of focus for this particular grant was improving engagement, authenticity, and relevancy. So as an educator, it's imperative that we keep our students engaged with our content. When content is outdated, students obviously become very quickly disengaged. Additionally, another factor that engages students is authenticity. When learning fails to make a personal connection, it can lead to student disinterest. And then finally, relevancy in the field of STEM. Content is constantly changing. Technology that was cutting edge one year can be outdated the next. So similar theme there, once it is irrelevant, then student interest wanes. Interest and personal relevancy is a major component to learning something new. So overcoming these in an area in which that, it's constantly changing, constantly improving, constantly being updated can be difficult at times. So my research question is, will the implementation of emerging technologies increase student engagement in the classroom and help encourage students to explore new potential careers? So next up's my action plan. There were two kind of main areas that I researched while coming up with this action plan. First one is active learning, hands-on, problem-based. Research shows that it increases student engagement. Engagement directly correlates to student achievement. It improves the student's ability to think critically. It increases the retention of the content, helps spark creativity, and fosters real-world problem solving, which this is the class, the whole premise of the class in which I'm applying this is based upon real-world problem solving. Next up, it provides relevancy, provides context for the information. I don't know how many times as a student I used to always ask, or I've heard students ask, when will I ever use this? Well, by making learning relevant, you provide that context. Similar to active learning, it increases student engagement. It helps expose students to potential careers. If it's something that's relevant to their real life, they may find something they're interested in. And then finally, in this case, it shows the future context and application of this learning. The action plan, so students will engage in active learning activities as they learn about and apply technologies in the field of artificial intelligence. This hands-on experience will help students better understand the future implications of and consider a potential career in this emerging field. So last year, and I'll mention it more here in a few minutes, we kind of started dipping our toes into the waters, so to speak, with artificial intelligence. And this year, that was more on like a conceptual level. So this year, I want to provide that active learning, that hands-on because it is really an interesting field, and it's a quickly emerging field. I forget the exact statistic, but a significant percentage of careers will involve some kind of interaction with computers in the not so distant future. So by giving it this hands-on aspect of it, I really hope to increase their engagement and help them consider this field as a potential career in the future. So resources, Google has really two kits. They have a Google Voice Kit and a Google Vision Kit. The Voice Kit allows students to use machine learning to create artificial intelligence solution based on auditory inputs. And then similarly, the Vision AI Kit allows students to create solutions that function based on visual inputs. So you have both sides of that there. And my thought is that we kind of learn about these different things, and then students can choose which of them would be more applicable to their chosen area of focus. Additionally, I've got a couple Mark robots. These kits are based on AI autonomous vehicles. The students design the roadway, and you help the car learn to autonomously navigate that path. And then finally, batteries, so that they can be powered when they're away from the kit. And I got rechargeable, not recyclable, rechargeable batteries, so that way they can be used over and over again and help increase the long-term sustainability of the project. To evaluate the project, my desired outcomes, the students will display increased levels of engagement with the classroom content. Like I said, last year we did a little bit with artificial intelligence, and students thought it was interesting, but they weren't really as engaged as they should have been, and that's on me. I didn't make it as relevant as it could have been, so this year we're trying to rectify that. Students will demonstrate an in-depth understanding of content through the visual creation of virtual learning experiences. And then finally, students will demonstrate an increased understanding of key content principles. So just what I said there, that they're going to create and demonstrate their learning. Before we get rolling on this one, I'm going to give a pre-implementation survey to kind of see what their general understanding is. Also to determine any kind of potential interest in the field of AI as a career. And then through direct observations, I'm going to compare student interest levels this year to those of last year to see if there were increased levels of engagement. Obviously, the student work samples, the artifacts which they create to demonstrate their learning will be a direct reflection of the overall success or failure of the project as well. And then finally, I'll give a post-implementation survey to determine if students' understanding or attitudes have changed towards the field of artificial intelligence. Communicating the results. So currently all of the materials have arrived. I've been looking through them. I haven't got them all rolling yet, all set up yet. The students, I've discussed it with them. Currently they're working on another project, but we've discussed upcoming projects and they are excited. And they've thrown out several promising applications of artificial intelligence. So I'm excited about that. And then as the project goes on, I will continue taking photos and sharing them out on the holler. Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about my grant, Authentic Applications of 3D Printing. So hi, I am Mark Harmon. I'm a STEM instructor at Ashland Middle School. I teach computer science classes, I teach some 3D modeling and printing classes, and then I teach some just general application of STEM principles courses as well. So my area of focus for this innovation grant was improving student engagement, authenticity, and relevancy. So first off, as an educator, it is imperative that we keep students engaged with our content. When content is outdated or only partially implemented, students can quickly become disengaged. So this particular grant focuses on my 3D modeling class. And then with that, we use the tools that are used in the real world, but we don't really take that next step, which emphasizes the real world applicability of those tools. So that's what we're kind of focusing on to increase that engagement. Authenticity. So another factor engages students is authenticity. When learning fails to make a personal connection or lacks real world applications, it can lead to student disinterest. I'm sure you've heard students say before, or you may have even said, when am I ever going to need to know this? So that authenticity gives them that real world connection, that real world application. And then finally, relevancy. So in the field of STEM especially, content is constantly changing. Technology that was considered cutting edge 1 year ago cannot be outdated the next. Once it has become irrelevant, students' interest wanes. So for this particular one, we've had 3D modeling for quite some time, and I wouldn't say that it's grown stagnant, but it's grown fairly commonplace. It doesn't have that it doesn't have that that extra, that oomph that it used to have. But the goal of this grant is to bring some of that excitement back into it. So my research question: will authentic problem-based learning increase student engagement and improve student achievement? So for this grant, like I said, we're going to use actual hands-on problem-based learning. My action plan, first off, the research that helped me develop my action plan was first off active learning, hands-on engagement, problem-based learning. We want to increase student engagement, which also increases achievement. It improves critical thinking, it improves retention, helps spark creative thinking, which is going to be especially relevant for this project. And then finally, it fosters real-world problem solving. So it gives them something something tangible, something that makes those connections. And then finally, we're going to do some relevancy. We want to increase relevancy. So relevancy provides context for the information. It increases student engagement. Once again, big one's engagement. Increased engagement increases performance. It helps expose students to potential careers. So typically we explore 3D modeling in concept. They make 3D models. We'll do some basic 3D printing, but those are typically trinkets. Hopefully through this project, it'll show the real world relevancy of it, will help expose some potential careers that utilize 3D modeling and printing. And then finally, it shows future context and applications. The action plan is to increase student engagement and therefore performance. Students will engage in the implementation of their learning. Typically, students learn 3D modeling by following tutorials and completing step-by-step instructions. Now, students will engage in the authentic application and implementation of this learning by developing real-world solutions. This allows learning to be more meaningful, relevant, and engaging. So students will identify a problem that they have in their lives, in their community, things that they've noticed in the world, and then they will brainstorm and develop potential solutions to those problems, and then they will utilize 3D modeling to develop authentic solutions that can be implemented and hopefully solve or at least ease the burden of that problem. Resources, I've got a LiDAR scanner. This is through the new iPad Pro. It has a LiDAR scanner, allows students to create 3D models of existing technologies or existing objects that they can then digitally manipulate. They can bring it into that 3D modeling software, and then they can modify, make changes, replicate whatever they need to do there. Additionally, I needed some carbon fiber filament. I've got traditional filaments like PLA or TPU or ABS. However, that carbon fiber filament is much more rigid, much more durable, so it gives an additional real-world applicability to their solutions by making them out of such a much more usable, much more actually not applicable, I already said that, but a much more authentic material there. And then toolkits, I got a rotary toolkit, and then also a 3D objects toolkit that helps with aesthetics and helps them be more, something that's more likely to be actually utilized in the real world. To evaluate the project, the outcomes for the project, they display an increased level of engagement with the classroom content. Once again, that'll be compared to current levels in which students are just tasked with creating 3D models. Students will demonstrate an in-depth understanding of the content through the application of 3D modeling and printing, so they will actually create the object in which they will be their solutions. They will create the 3D model for their solutions and then print that out and then test it to determine its effectiveness. Students will demonstrate an increased understanding of the key content principles. So will they have a better understanding of the content which that I want them, which they need to learn, or the skills that I want them to gain. Evaluation, there will be a pre-implementation survey, so beforehand we'll send that out. Direct observations, so like I said, it'll be compared to previous implementations of the lessons. Student work samples, so students are going to be creating authentic artifacts of their learning. Those can be directly attributed as examples of, or as representations of the success of the project. And then finally, a post-implementation survey to determine student interest in careers, and then just how engaged they felt they were with the content. So current status and what's next. The materials for the project have arrived. I downloaded some 3D scanning apps onto the iPad. The LiDAR scanner is especially accurate. We've had some scanners in the past that we've tried for other projects, and they weren't very effective. The LiDAR scanner is much more effective. Also, I've discussed this with students. We've briefly begun using our 3D modeling software. So through discussions, they seem excited, and they've already been discussing some potential 3D solutions. One that I found particularly interesting, and there may even be something out there for it, but students were talking about they had gone out for ice cream and had some ice cream dripping on their hands, so they wanted to create something that would shape the cone could fit into, but would trap the ice cream so they could eat it, which I thought sounded pretty neat. Like I said, maybe something out there, may not, but they were pretty pumped, so we're going to roll with it. Once the project starts, I'll begin taking a lot of photos, and then I'll share those out through the holler, and then obviously in the spring I will communicate my results via the FIRESummit.
All right, good evening. This is Bobby out of the School of Innovation here in Floyd County. Appreciate the opportunity to have this grant, and in that, what my hopes and desires are is that our young men who are going to be building this, which is my junior and senior class, will learn and understand what it is to actually do carpentry and a project and complete it, and it will be here at our school that all the other young people who come through this school will use it as a workbench. We have no workbench at this point. So with that, I'm truly really appreciate this opportunity. So I'm going to give you a little bit of overview where some of the stuff's going. Like I said, we're a real young school. We're just trying to begin this and trying to set up a workshop. I'm going to be teaching OSHA safety and core curriculum safety. So we're going to have them to learn to use power tools so that they can use it here, and then as they go into the world of work, so they have that base and that foundation to be able to do that and know how to add and subtract and to cut and to piece things together. So you can see we have a basic outline of how and what the tools and the cost of everything is. And as I said earlier, we're a new school. Going to put casters on it so that we can move it back and forth and move it about in our classroom and use it for a lot of things. In that, hope to make a 4x8. Well, the plans are we've drawn them up is make a 4x8 workbench with a work tape with work room on top of it with a second shelf on it, and then we're going to have a retractable miter saw that will slide in and out, and then we'll put a piece of wood in place of that where that miter saw comes out, so that we have a complete 8-foot table to work off of. As I said, second year school, we're just beginning, and in that, one of the things that was really one of my concerns is that the dust. One of the parts of this is that we find a dust collector. At this point right now, all we have is the heating and air conditioning unit that it actually is cleaning the air. We're sweeping it and cleaning it every day as when we're using that. But with that, I wanted to be able to catch the dust to help the students' safety and the school safety. So we really appreciate the opportunity, and really appreciate that these young men are going to be able to leave a part of them here at this school, so that the others that come and go, they can brag on it and tell them, yes, we built that one. We were the first ones to build a work table. We did it all on our own. He gave us instructions. We drew it all up. We assembled it, and there it is. And they can walk around with pride.
Guys, Courtney Kidd from Floyd County School of Innovation. I'm here to talk to you all today about my grant, Amp Up the Engagement Using Breakout Room. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to talk to you all about the inspiration behind this, the purpose, how I spent my ARI grant funding, the plan of action, like how my students are going to utilize this, and then how I want to use this as an assessment throughout the school year. A lot of you have heard of breakout rooms. A lot of you know that those breakout room kits are like things that you can purchase. But a lot of times those are set in standard ways that really can't be manipulated to fit all content areas. What I have decided to do with this grant is basically build myself a supply chest of tools that I could use to create my own breakout activities for my students that will allow me to assess them across the curriculum. Everything from ciphers to like invisible ink, and you'll see me talk about some of that as we go through this. But again, I just wanted to create something that would be stimulating for the kids, but be able to assess them no matter what class they were in with me, from biology to anatomy to college biology to engineering. So because I dabble in all of those, it was important for me to come up with something that I could use cross-curricular. Ideally, this kind of kicked off this summer for me. I worked with all of my coworkers during summer school, and we actually ended our summer school program with this giant breakout room activity with the students. And basically it was just like kind of assessing like every field that we had dabbled in throughout summer school. And I really saw it was a paper activity, paper strategy for us, but I really saw how the kids latched onto that, and it immediately became something that I was interested in doing and something that I wanted to pull into my classroom. So it's not just like, I don't intend for it to replace my teaching. I don't want it to be like a research activity or anything like that. I actually want to use these as a mode of assessment so I can see what my students have learned from unit to unit. You can see through the money expectation, the projected amounts. I tried to think to cover as many different possibilities as possible. You'll see on the list everything, Braille alphabet board, so we can use like a code, pig pen grids, invisible pens, UV lights, and then you'll see a series of locks that I found to actually do the lock boxes. Each lock box has the potential to have 6 different locks on that station, so that gives me the potential to have all the way up to 6 different assessments to check my kids on a piece of my standard. Plan of action, again, it is for me to purchase the kits, and not really a kit, but the materials to make my own kit to do like escape treasure boxes. I want to use them cross-curricularly. Designing my own class setup, something that I can manipulate to fit what my students need. Everything that I mentioned above should lead me to have a more capable blended learning coming out of the last couple of years with all of the virtual aspects that we had. I wanted this to be something that no matter where my students were working from, digitally or in person, this would be something that they could latch onto. And I do think it's worth adding that I have already developed Google Docs that will coincide with some of the planned activities that I have, so I can actually manipulate those templates and use them throughout the year. You'll see in the picture, this one is a cell phone challenge that turns into a cipher from a text. But these are some ideas for templates that I plan to use through these reinforcement activities. So it's just a different way for the students to explore things that they've already learned. Completely a sustainable project. One of the things that I'm most excited about is the fact that it can be used cross-curricularly. It can be used year after year. And it's also something that I can share with my coworkers and actually get the students engaged in their classes as well. Ideally, by the time we hit the spring presentation, I'm hoping to have several videos and pictures for you all so you can see how the kids actually took the tools and hopefully they've ran with the project. Guys, Courtney Kidd from Floyd County School of Innovation. I am here today to talk to you all about my grant, Manufacturing Young Engineers. This is a grant that I'm actually really passionate about. Out of the few that I did this year, I feel like this is the one that kind of kick-started some of the ideas that I had for some of my other grants. Throughout the course of this, I'll talk to you about the inspiration, the purpose, the plan of action, like how I'm actually going to spend the money and what I hope to achieve with my students. And then we'll talk a little bit about sustainability. How is this something that we can continue to do with my classes, not only this year, but in years to come? So the inspiration behind this project actually comes from the engineering pathway that we have selected to offer as a school. We are working on computer integrated manufacturing. The students are taking Project Lead the Way courses with me currently, where they can work toward those certifications in 3D design. With that being said, our district, all our schools, they were completely on board with helping me to actually process and fund some glow forges to use in the engineering classroom. And that kind of prompted where I wanted to take this project. Not only is this project used to teach technical concepts to my students, but it is going to help with like finance. It's going to help with business ethics, engineering design, with the entire process that they would need for actual marketing of their own creations. The purpose behind this, because we do have the CNC machine already and we already have Glowforge, it was an opportunity for me to be able to offer the students, the ability to create something that was there. So what I have put in front of them is actually the idea of them opening their own sales department or their own store in a sense. The students will be allowed to market items that they've created using our supplies, but this grant will help us buy some of the things that we need to get that started. For instance, we've looked at like acrylic LED night lights that could be personalized and marketed to families, especially during the holidays or for birthdays or for celebrations. The students picked out cutting boards that could be engraved with personal messages, recipes, things like that. We looked at stuff that the student body may be more interested in, like key fobs, keychains, just like personalized magnets. We thought about that for our sports teams, maybe like school names, numbers, all that kind of stuff. And then we also looked at just purchasing some wood, like a Baltic birch, that could be cut on our machines for the idea of them being able to take orders for customized pieces. With this, because the project is completely, it's pretty much consisting of consumables, we had to figure out a way to make this something that was sustainable for the students in the class. So with the marketing idea, we plan to use any of our return revenue or our funding to replenish our supplies, so to keep it as an ongoing source. One of the things that we were surprised to find out is that this not only could work as a classroom assignment, but so many competitions are offered for young entrepreneurs. I actually have a group of 4 girls that are kind of jumping into this, and they're going to try to start like a school store for their classmates. So very curious to see how far they can take that this year. And I look forward to it being something that we can offer continually because of that funding. As far as the money goes, you can see the breakdown. A big chunk of it did go to buying the supplies to make the LED night lights. But we do think that that may be one of our larger revenue intakes. So we are looking at sorting those. Again, the wood, the cutting boards, the keychains. You can kind of see the breakdown for that, and it does fall right at that 1,000 ARI grant amount. And these were some images that we actually pulled for some of the stuff that we had thought about. These are the acrylic nightlight bases. We did a series, we did black and white. The 2 covered pieces there are actually acrylic that can be cut. We purchased mainly clear this time so we could use the alternating colors. And you can kind of see a sample there of what those acrylic night lights will look like when they're finished. As far as marketing and pricing, we have not developed that yet. We're still waiting on some of the items to ship. So once they've said that, I'll actually be able to provide you with a price list to talk about the monetary income that we came up with Christmas ornaments, we did purchase some of the wood discs with some of the funding so we could market those this winter. This is an example of the wooden magnet that I was talking about. We intended it to be more of like a school support thing. This particular one is a save the date. And then you can see both the leather and acrylic keychains. So very interested to see some of the designs that they come up with and how they actually decide to market these items. Students have addressed they intend to use social media. They're going to do brochure sales, and we've even talked about doing sales booths at our feeder high schools, especially during like ball games, things like that. We want them to be able to sell their own personal designs, not just to friends and family, but also our community members. We want the community to realize that we are engrossed in trying to get our students to an actual career pathway. So looking at things like profit margin, looking at revisions they need to make, time, are all of those things playing a factor into the way that we are creating the products that we are. Like I said earlier, this is something that can be continual. We entirely are looking, any of the funding that we do gain back, we want to use that to buy supplies for future STEM or manufacturing classes. And we are also planning to fund part of our TSA chapter supplies using funding from this project. So the sustainability, the assessment, the outlook for this, I'm really hopeful about it, and I hope we can get some of these products off of the ground in time to show you some of their awesome work in the spring. Hey everybody, this is Courtney Kidd from the Floyd County School of Innovation. I'm here to talk to you all about my grant, Out of the Box Engineering. A couple things that we'll look at throughout the course of this presentation, including the inspiration, the purpose behind it, how we intend to spend the money, my plan of action for the students, and then finally, how am I going to use this as an assessment for the things that they have learned in my class. At the School of Innovation, we are in our second year of existence, and I have actually taken on a completely new pathway in my teaching career. Now that I'm focused on technical classes, one of the things that I have really been focused on is trying to find relevant activities for my engineering students to be able to showcase like job-related skills, things that would promote career and industry to them. And with this grant, what I decided to do was to actually take the skill of machining, which everybody knows in the industry is really taking off as far as like millwork, CNC. And what I want to happen with this for my students is I want them to take their skills with machining and I want them to incorporate that into our engineering pathway of manufacturing. I am lucky enough to say that my students have exposure to a bench mill 6000. We have also purchased 2 classroom glow forges for the students to use. But the problem comes in that sometimes it's harder for us to get some of the supplies that we need. Some of the companies, not necessarily on our state or district bid lists. This grant kind of gives me the opportunity to reach out to some different partners that I didn't have before and to bring in some supplies that my students didn't necessarily have to complete what they needed. Again, with this, we are going to look at a prototype design. Students are going to be designing their own containers, things ranging from trinket boxes, jewelry boxes, card cases. So just some different things that can actually be milled on our machine. The grant will allow me to purchase some wood that's used in the picture there on the right. This is actually called rim shape. It is something that I learned about through a project Lead the Way training. So instead of having the students work directly on metals and things like that, this is kind of like a first step for them. You will see that almost the entirety of my grant has been spent on that rim modeling for them to make their own models, to make their own prototypes. To do the project, students are going to have to rely heavily on 3D design. As a school, we use Fusion 360. My students will also be trained in Inventor next semester. This particular project, they will be using Inventor for. but it has them walk through the entire spectrum of what has to happen to actually build a prototype. They go through the actual designing and blueprinting. They go through like writing the G code for the CNC machine to actually cut out the pieces that they design. And I have even considered one way of making this sustainable is allowing them to market their pieces or kind of have that entrepreneurship aspect to it. We also did list on here a drill press vise so we could actually hold the boxes in place in the milling machine. And then I put a couple of end mills on here that they would need to do the borders and designs to actually do the cutout for projects. On this screen, it does talk about the plan of action. It kind of hits on some of the things that I mentioned already. The fact that the students would be writing G code, they would be doing 3D modeling, processing. Tolerances and dimensioning is something personally coming into this as a biology teacher and then taking on engineering. Some of this is stuff that I'd never really considered before, but understanding, you know, for these kids, the lid has to fit the box. It can't sit on top of it. And just the little tweaks and the little changes that they have to make in speeds and the feed rates at which the machines work to build their final products, I just think it gives them a good idea of the manufacturing process and helps them understand how assembly operations work. The boxes that are present on here, these are actually, they are also sliced from Renwood. They can be stained if you use certain grades. And then the top layers are acrylic that we can use our Glowforge machines for. Over to the right, this is a sample of a student writing a G code using a coordinate-based system. So not only do you get the computer programming and the manufacturing, you get a little bit of that geometry, you get a little bit of that math that they need for core classes. So this project is actually designed to be cross-curricular yet again, which is a big emphasis at our school. As far as assessment goes, I really want this to be more about the ownership of student learning. This is not something that they're going to necessarily take a test about when they're finished. But I think them having a tangible product in their hands at the end, I think that's what keeps them motivated. That's what keeps them engaged. That's what gives them that self-direction of, you know, I realized that when I was running my trial, I realized, you know, maybe my corners aren't cutting. Maybe I left something too sharp and it's not necessarily what I was looking for. It gives them that ownership to be able to delegate and make decisions that they need to make regarding their own products. So a lot of autonomy with this, a lot of choice, a lot of responsibility that I think can come from successful completion. Hopefully by the time that we come back for the spring summit, you will be able to see a ton of things that my students have created. Guys, this is Courtney Kidd from Floyd County School of Innovation. I am here to talk to you all today about my grant, Why It Matters, a real look into real life biology. A couple of things that I'm going to talk to you all about today throughout the course of this, looking at the inspiration for my project, the purpose, like what I'm hoping for my students to achieve, how I intend to spend the money from the grant funding, the plan of action that I have for the students, how I will assess them, and then for future sustainability. The inspiration for this project comes from a conversation that I literally have with my kids every year. I hear, Miss Kidd, when am I going to use this? Why does this matter? Am I ever going to use this when I grow up? And as a veteran teacher, those are questions that, I don't just want to give them those same old answers of when you go to college or when you go to the doctor. I want them to see the actual application. So the intention with this grant is I have designed it to be able to purchase some materials, especially from like the forensic science field. So I can collaborate with our health teacher. I can collaborate with our criminal justice teacher, working with my introductory biology classes, some of our computer science programs, to be able to show them the incorporation across curriculum to kind of just enhance their exposure to the ways that science are actually used in real life. The purpose behind it is not so much just the addressing of content, I'm looking more at the design for this to be able to like increase their confidence. I want them to have the ability to make sense of problems when those issues are posed to them. I want them to be able to look at quantitative and qualitative data, be able to crunch the numbers, but at the same time making careful observations about surrounding environments and things that could actually impact situations. So I have chosen lab sets that will require them to use those reasoning skills. On the slide that you're seeing now, this is a breakdown of how I projected the use of money for my project. You'll notice everything on here from studying heart rate using Daphnia, coroner's reports, DNA fingerprinting, analysis of drugs and different powders to kind of give them not only just the criminal aspect of it, but so they can actually do some chemical engineering and chemical biology in conjunction with all of this. And then it kind of wraps up at the bottom with a food analysis mystery that I would like to use to link into like nutrition and real life biology situations. In total, the grant that I like, the total, it ranked up to almost $1,000. So I did request the full $1,000 from the ARI grant. But kind of curious to see how all of those projects go and if we can get that many in the time limit. Plan of action is to use these as activities like clinical lab sciences, criminal forensic science, like I said, in conjunction and in collaboration with other teachers. Anything from hair analysis, blood analysis, soil with our agriculture program. I just really want this to be cross-curricular. So the students will be working with mock scenarios for these explorations. The mode of assessment that I intend to use in this instance is going to be for the students to deliver not like written full out reports or oral speeches, but based on the situation, it may be a lab report, it'll be a clinical report, it'll be an autopsy report. It just depends on each activity in its standalone self. I want them to be exposed to different kinds of reporting. So those I do expect to be criminal and clinical. Oh, excuse me. And then sustainability, a lot of the items in these kits, they're not consumables. They are things that can be used for a number of years. And then some of the ones like the Daphnia, for instance, the kit itself and the way the lab works, that is one that can be replenished and it can be used for years to come. So I'm really curious to see how these activities go with my students.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kincaid, and I'm here today to speak to you about my ARI grant that I earned and won. And it's entitled, let me get there. Virtual is now reality. And that's what we're going to be talking about today with that. So let me get all my stuff up here. Okay. Virtual is now reality. Now, what I saw here was a problem that we were having in class. And I noticed it on one of the first days of school, we were doing a getting to know you activity. And one of my students, one of the get to know you activities was like something about traveling and where you've been on vacation or whatever else. And so this one student said, well, I don't know about travel or vacation. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, I've never left the state. And I was like, what? You know, I was just, before I even knew what I was saying, I was like, spoke. I couldn't, take it back. But he had volunteered that information to the class. And I said, you've never left the state? He said, no, I've never left the state. I've never gone on vacation. I've never done anything. And I said, I just don't believe you've not left the state, because where my school is situated, Belfry High School, we are 1 mile from the West Virginia border. And so I proceeded to ask him, I said, you've not been like down the road and across that bridge into West Virginia? And he said, no, not that I can remember. And afterwards, I was able to sort of ponder on that. And it really shocked me, because what he said was this: I never have had any reason to go there. And for me, travel, you don't have to have a reason to go to travel. And so I have been everywhere. I've been all over most of the East Coast. I've been to Canada and Mexico and all these different places in the Caribbean. I've been to all kinds of states. I've seen all kinds of national parks and all these things. And so to me, that seems so very foreign. But when I began to realize is that that he was not alone. I've had very few students. They may have left the state, but they've only gone as far as Williamson, West Virginia, which is, like I said, a mile away. So I recognize that travel is a problem, and experiencing things for my students is very important. The other problem I recognize is that funding. It is expensive to travel. Now, if I was going to travel by myself, it's not that bad, but when you start getting school buses and students and tickets and all of these things, it's very expensive. And if a student hasn't left the state up until this point, made it all the way to high school without leaving the state, then funding on their personal part is probably very low. And then getting funding from the school or other resources, that just is sometimes difficult and always not available. And then now living in the world that we know of as the world of pandemic of COVID, there are so many travel restrictions, and it's just not feasible really to travel anymore. So I began researching and the benefits and the good things of ARI grants, as I have other colleagues who have done grants in the past, or I've gone to the summits and learned information from other regional colleagues. And that's where I looked into virtual can be reality. And what I saw was a way to fix this problem is to get some DSCBR virtual reality goggles. And as you can see here in the picture, they are, you mount your cell phone in there, and it's compatible with both Android and Apple iOS. Both of those work together. So Apple, Samsung, or everything in between works with these adaptable VR glasses, VR goggles. And what I thought was good about this version as well is it doesn't fit over your head. There's no gearing or rigging. It's not heavy. You can easily remove it from your face, and it also makes for a better sterile surface that can easily be wiped down very quickly. Now, the reason why I wanted to do these VR goggles is simply because of what I began to look into. Free things like Discovery Education and things like that. There's so many pictures and places all over the world, and almost every website now has something that you can go see in real time. I remember I showed my students several years ago Old Faithful erupting in Yellowstone National Park, and that's a place that I personally have been, and it is a pretty fascinating experience. But I have students who won't ever see that, and so I thought that the problem for me was they're not traveling, they're not seeing anything, they are being stuck and feeling even more confined as a result of COVID. But really, COVID had nothing to do with what was being, the restrictions that this student had on travel. It was simply he did not have the means to do that, to travel. And so I thought, well, what a better way than to learn the world and learn the map and learn where everything's located and culture and everything. I think that travel just goes right along with social studies. So having these VR goggles, I think, is what I want to do, is to eliminate that problem. My students will sit right here in my classroom, and we will go to all kinds of places and see all kinds of things. And now I have recognized that some students will not have smartphones, even though the majority of my students do. They do not have smartphones, but we have means to cover that, to share or work together, and to do different activities along with that. But we wanted to use the VR goggles, and that's what I think is going to be best. The good thing about this one, I have, like I said, the pictures on the previous page. This brand that we are using, they only cost about $20 or $25 a piece. So I'm able to purchase an entire classroom set that my whole department, my whole social studies department, will be able to use. Now, if you see here, so you see the picture of them, and they, like I said, they're plastic, but it's a heavy duty plastic. It's got a big sort of rubber band here that's going to be on the face to hold it. But they are more cost effective, and they're not very expensive to replace. So that's the reason I went with that option. The next thing I'm getting with this grant is I'm going to be able to purchase an iPad, and the iPad allows you as the teacher to download different apps, and then the students will link into those, and they will just sign into them, and you can walk around the room, and you can sort of facilitate their travel and move them through a place or a location, and that gives it to just ease, so you're not just having to sit here as well. It also allows you to see what they're seeing without having to be in the VR goggles, and that may be a little difficult for you. But the plans for this is that, like I said, I sort of already touched on that. Plans for this is to simply buy the VR goggles and begin traveling with my students, doing it sort of as a fun thing at first, to just like, hey, we're taking this a little trip today, we're taking a field trip, and then being able to incorporate that into my classes is what I'm looking to. And really the main thing is I want to give the world to my students who feel like their world is so small and they're so confined financially, geographically, emotionally, as where they are, but they can go and see all these amazing wonders of creation that I have seen, and that we can all travel together and see things that I haven't experienced, and we can have those experiences together. So that is my goal for this year. We have yet to order our goggles. They are coming up here soon, and just going on some major adventures. I'm Sarah Kincaid, and today we're going to talk about Not a Blank Canvas, Enhancing Canvas LMS with Engaging Teaching. As I said, I'm Sarah Kincaid with Belfry High School in Pike County, Kentucky. And if you have any questions about my presentation or would like to reach out to me, I can be reached at sarah.kincaid@pike.kyschools.us. So let's get started. All right, the question we're going to talk about today is, what makes Crash Course so successful? Now, if you have been in a high school classroom within the last 10 or 12 years, I would say you probably have seen or heard of John Green and Crash Course. John and Hank Green and Crash Course. And they are two individuals. I'm pretty sure they were high school teachers at one time, or they may still be. But they started creating these YouTube videos and created this sensation on YouTube, Crash Course, giving you information about whatever topic, from science to history to English to literature to all kinds of stuff. And they did it in about 15 minutes or less. And it wasn't their exceptional attractive abilities, because they're not ugly individuals, but they are not these beautiful people. They are not they are witty, but they're not necessarily funny. They're actually sort of corny and zany, and they don't have anything that's really super fancy or state of the art. But some things that they do have is they have a quick YouTube video that gets your attention. It educates you, it entertains you, and it has enough activity going on that it holds your attention. And in the end of the 15 minutes, you're like, wow, I have learned something about that topic. So I was trying to think of, and I've used Crash Course many, many times. They even have, now they have like divided into whole subject areas that you could basically show a crash course, once a week or once every 2 weeks in your units. And so they're very, very thorough. But not everything is that they show is everything that I want to teach. And sometimes they go really fast. They talk super fast, and the students will complain that, like, hey, I don't know what they're saying. They're just talking really, really fast. And so even though I think they are amazing and they definitely have tapped into some extremely lucrative YouTube resources, I don't think Crash Course is the be-all, end-all of all blended learning and video learning, even though I still use them quite often. So what we're going to talk about is, how can we become our own version, I guess, of John and Hank Green. Now, what I began to look at is that our main problem during this time of pandemic, but even before that, is that we're going to have days of virtual learning. We've had NTI around for a long time, and there's just times that we're not going to be in the classroom. And prior to the pandemic, I was a digital classroom anyway. I was already using Google Classroom, and my class was full on a digital classroom. And so making a big transition going from in class to being virtual was not an issue for me. But what I'm realizing is that we still have some students who are virtual. We still have days that were virtual, and I think the days of snow days are over with. We'll just say, hey, this is a virtual day, and teachers will stay at home and continue to work just as they would as normal. But that sounds great, and that sounds efficient, and that sounds very modern classroom. But it's not always great. Having the blended classroom isn't necessarily a good thing. And but we want to be able to embrace that, because that's the reality that we're in right now, is that the blended learning, video-based learning. We in our high school is now a complete one-to-one high school. Everyone has a laptop. Everyone uses it in class. And like I said, this is my 4th or 5th year that I have done virtual learning. And so my class is 100% virtual. There's occasionally we'll have some art activities and things that are going on that are on paper. But yeah, we're 100% virtual. But that doesn't mean that just because I have fallen in lockstep with the virtual classroom, that doesn't mean I'm a great teacher, or that doesn't mean I'm a great teacher at virtual learning. So that's what I began to look at. So our big problem was that we had that. Virtual learning is here. How do we deal with that, and how do we make it better? Well, the first thing is, how do we do this? Well, I have to say Canvas is a great tool. I worked 2 entire school years with Google as a Google Classroom, and I thought it was great. I loved Google Classroom. I thought everything about it was awesome until I met Canvas. And now I could never imagine, well, I can't imagine, but I don't want to imagine going away from a Canvas classroom. I know there's all kinds of learning management systems out there, but Canvas is what our county has now used for 2 years, and I love it. I love it. I mean, I could be like the person who speaks on behalf of Canvas. And so that's how we are using in our county to accommodate and to combat this issue is Canvas. How we also use this and how we also make this worthwhile is through AV, audio visual. You don't have to be a mega YouTuber to know if they don't have good audio, you're not listening to it. So you need to have good audio, and you need to have good visuals, and you need to have good recording equipment to make good videos for your students. Because when it comes, and we'll get to that in just a moment, when it comes down to it, they want to see you and they want to hear you. Whether they want to really talk about the Magna Carta or the periodic table, they still, they know they have to, so they want to hear you. And the third way that I'm going to attack this is through Pear Deck. Pear Deck. Now, Pear Deck was something that I was introduced to a few summers ago. I spoke at the digital conference at Moorhead, and another colleague there spoke about Pear Deck, and I was like, hey, I've got to figure out how I can get this into my class. And so it is an interactive formative assessment tool that you can use, and you just seamlessly put it in with your PowerPoints or your blended learning videos, and it's just a neat activity. Now, the thing I really want to address with this is that we have been so conditioned over the last several years that stand and deliver is bad. Well, I'm going to tell you it's not a crime. Stand and deliver education is not terrible. It's not a crime. It's the way the majority of us learn, and shockingly, it's the way a lot of us still learn, even our students. But that doesn't mean you can't be creative, and the students do want to see you. They do. They're impressed with Crash Course and John and Hank Green, but they don't know John and Hank Green. They know you. So they want to see your face and they want to hear your voice. And so even though you may not have the technology out the wazoo and have producers and sound and all this, everything that they have, your student still has you. And so that's the issue that I wanted to bridge with this, is that, if John or Hank Green is on my screen giving a lecture, that's still stand and deliver. Now, it's fancy and looks all snazzy, but they're still standing and they're delivering information. And there is nothing wrong with that. That's how we get information to the student. The thing that I want to overcome with this project is that makes that stand and deliver so much more interactive. My face, my voice, I am interacting with my students and they are participating. So that's my goal, is that I'll be buying equipment to make my videos better. And maybe I'll give old John and Hank a run for their money and be able to retire early or whatever. But I'm wanting to take my classroom, as opposed to my kids just sitting there some kind of 1984 looking scenario that they're just, focused on their computer screen. And it's not just their computer screen. We are up and moving and talking, and it's still, I am standing and delivering the information to them because that's my job. That's what they pay me. I'm supposed to be the one delivering it. But I want to be that one who is, I'm delivering it to them and they are literally taking it in. I am Domino's, bringing them the pizza and they're gobbling it up. That's what I want from this project.
Hello, my name is Debbie LeMaster, and I am the art teacher at Hurl Whitaker Middle School in Sayersville, Magoffin County. My ARI grant was written for personally protected art access. Social emotional learning is a major part of education today. We know that not only schools, but students are facing increased issues with bullying, poverty, and intense expectations. As a tool for making meaningful communication, the arts can have a profound impact on the social and emotional health of our students. SEL, we've all heard of SEL, but we're looking at SEL and self-expression. SEL is such a critical component of all classrooms, whether online or in person. Elizabeth Peterson, founder of the Inspired Classroom and the developer of SEAL, which is Social and Emotional Artistic Learning, has published articles and lessons on how we can move from SAIL to SEAL. And CASTLE, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, is a leading expert in integrating SAIL into school curriculum. They have compiled a list of core competencies for students to learn. Those 5 key skills are self-awareness. This is something our students struggle with. It's the ability to identify and assess your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your values, as well as how they intersect with your behaviors. What am I doing? And is this really what I think about situations? Self-management. And oh my goodness, middle school has trouble with self-management. It is the ability not only to identify, but regulate emotions, thoughts, and actions. They need to learn how to set goals. They need to learn how to stay organized, to stay focused, to be patient and realize that I may have this goal, but I can't get it immediately. They need to learn how to make a plan so that they can develop and reach those goals that they are working hard for. Responsible decision making. Getting adults to make responsible decisions is sometimes extremely difficult. With middle school, it's even more. It's the ability to make a positive, constructive choice about their behavior, to realize that what they're doing has consequences, and sometimes it's long-term consequences. They need to learn how to do this. Social awareness. I also have a Spanish minor, so within my art class, I throw in a little bit of Spanish here and there and looking at cultures and getting them to aware of how things look from different points of view. They're not used to that. They're used to looking at things from their point of view only. And so to help them to understand that different points of views are okay. Just because you think differently than I do does not mean that you are wrong or that I am wrong. It's just a different point of view. They need to learn what family is, what school is, what their community resources are and support systems that they can go to when they need help. And relationship skills. The ability to get along and make meaningful connections with people in their life. This is what they struggle with. They struggle with their friendships. They struggle with their families. They struggle communicating. So if we can give them a tool that will help them develop these skills, we're setting them on a path for success. Not only are the previous 5 things a hurdle for these kids to get over, we've now thrown them into the middle of a pandemic. We have COVID that has invaded all of our lives. It's changed the way we look at things. It's changed the way we act. It changes the way that we interact with each other. And our young people not only are struggling with that, but adults are struggling with that. When I retired in 2018 from Johnson Central High School. I took an early retirement. My dad was sick and I needed to stay home with him. Well, last summer of 2020, my dad passed away, and I decided that I was going to continue with my teaching career and finish out to retirement. I retired pre-COVID. Now that I've returned to work, I'm in the midst of a pandemic. So things have changed and look totally different for me than what they did when I retired. But one of the things that's helped me a lot is that how our school has addressed the issues and the safety concerns according to CDC guidelines. Mask and social distancing is mandatory. As we change into the different color zones, those will change as well. But my challenge was not the social distancing, because you can see in the photos here, I have a huge classroom with lots of tables and I can distance my children easily. I put 2 per table. They are wearing their masks. And so their safety as far as distancing is not a concern of mine. Between classes, I wipe down tables, I sanitize things, and prep for the next group. The sanitizing the table and those are not a problem for me. Here you can see my biggest issue is that students are sharing the same supplies. Sometimes certain supplies are easy to sanitize. But as I look at these kids and I look at those colored pencils and I spray down those colored pencils between classes, and I wonder, did I get them all cleaned? The paintbrushes that they share, we wash them out, but I'm not sure how clean they are as they get done, as they handle the paint bottles, as they handle various materials, including the stacks of paper that we share. That puts my students at a high risk for cross-contamination between groups. The regular classes do not rotate. The teachers rotate. So that limits the students carrying viruses and bacteria from one room to another. My room and the other co-curricular classes are the only ones that they change to. So the concern for cleanliness and reducing the risk of transferring the virus is key for my classes. Things I have already done to limit contamination is that in this classroom, I have been afforded a huge amount of storage space. And you can see these drawers here. The white tags are names of students. I have 2 students per drawer, and the drawers are divided in the middle, as you can see in the picture there on the bottom right. They have their personal supplies in there, their own colored pencils, their own scissors, protractors, rulers, projects that they're working on. This is where they store them. And so it's not stacking on top of someone else's. With this grant, I have been able to purchase individual supplies for each student. As this pandemic grows and fluctuates up and down, we're having students that are more and more in quarantine and going virtual and then coming back to class. With having access to personal supplies that is in their own little group, they can take these home with them, continue whatever art projects are assigned while they're home. And when they return back to school, they will bring their stuff back with them and have it there in class and still not have to share any supplies with the rest of the students. One of the things that I wanted to add in with this is journaling. And Elizabeth Peterson, that I referenced earlier, has shown in her research that SEL programs in schools are more likely to produce students that achieve high grades and test scores. They have higher self-esteem, develop positive coping mechanisms, and graduate from high school. And they view teachers and classmates more positively. So what I have done is paired this grant with another grant from the Youth Service Center. This grant is supplying them with the personal supplies of watercolor, color pencils, and some papers and things like that. While the other grant through the Youth Service Center is pairing them with the writing journal or drawing journal. It is a journal that has blank pages in it. I will be providing the students with prompts that will get them thinking about things that maybe happened to them through the day. What was the situation and how could you have handled it better? How do these things make you feel? What are things that make you feel happy? So it provides them with an opportunity to reflect and to grow. And journaling is a proven tool by psychologists and specialists across the country in addressing stress and depression. And hopefully this will provide them with the tool that they can use after they leave my class, because these art supplies will go with them when they do leave my class. So my long-term goal with this grant and the YSC grant is that I will provide students personal supplies that not only will help protect them from sharing viruses and other bacteria, but will provide them with a tool for coping with stress that they can use throughout their life.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiri Literal, and I am the Library Media Specialist at Ashland Middle School in Ashland, Kentucky. And I have applied for the grant for the Innovation Grant for Library Makerspaces for Engagement and Exploration. So, without further ado, I will walk you through what I hope to achieve. All right, so the action research cycle, our area of focus and problem of practice was when we think of our past library experience, we often think of a large room filled with wall to wall with books and a quiet environment and silent students. However, in today's world, a library is modeled to be more than just a place for the books to rest. It's designed to be a community space to explore ideas and to bring those ideas to fruition. So we need the library to be the hub of our school. And our students are thirsting for knowledge. So we just need to be able to capture their interests and engage them in learning. Every student in our middle school visits the library weekly, and following this, the ability to spark each child's imagination and interests have a lasting impact on their life. So furthermore, state standards have also changed to encompass technology components that all students need to be successful as adults. So questioning and problem solving are heavily embedded into learning as well. So we must change the way that we view our library and what our library can offer our students so that we can stay up with the times and our students can stay relevant in today's world. We can do better for our students and our communities. So gone are the days where we think that just simply acquiring the information is sufficient. We need to nurture and engage these students so that they are getting the necessary tools to apply that knowledge that they've gained in everyday life. So our research question is, will the implementation of new technology geared makerspaces increase student engagement in the library? Okay, so our action research cycle, step 2, we have makerspaces are a current and popular model for reaching all students through engaging activities that promote creativity and collaboration with their peers. Simply giving students books to discuss the technology and its implementation is a good start, but if we don't maximize that and put the knowledge in their minds and the products in their hands and allow them to create, then we aren't doing them the service that we could. So by integrating makerspaces and stations, we are bringing our books to life. We're applying real and tangible representations of the text that they read. I got a lot of my information from an article titled Makerspaces in Libraries: Technology as Catalyst for Better Learning, Better Teaching. Dr. Patrick Todd Colgrove wrote that article, and he acknowledged that libraries and their librarians are an integral piece in providing learning and teachable moments that benefit the community. He goes on to discuss the necessity to blend traditional academic content with active and collaborative learning, thus creating a true constructivist approach to the 21st century learning and education. Dr. Colgrove provided examples of technology and equipment being placed in libraries for the purpose of student use and exploration. So we hope that our goal is in the educational sector to expose students to various learning styles, curriculum, new technologies, to mold their educational path after K-12, and not giving them every advantage to do so is an injustice. So we are hoping that by introducing 3D printers and pens, that will allow students to create projects that they've designed and then master the use of that 3D printing software and technology. We hope that our stop motion animation kits and lighting paired with modeling clay will give students hands-on experience designing and implementing original works to create a final product that they can then showcase to their peers. Students will also have the opportunity to design and create utilizing a laser engraving machine as well as handheld engraving tools. We are hoping that our strategy, the technologies that we purchased will be used in various maker stations around the library. We have a central focus at each table, but the students have the freedom to create any number of products, only limited by their creativity. We will have our maker stations paired with library resources, such as library books, how-to books, articles that we can find. We can have Chromebook stations at the maker station so that they can watch how-to videos, because all of that is learning. I will provide support in researching as well as design ideas, along with all of our library staff. But ultimately, the students will be masters of their end product. So they will have a full vested interest in that work from the first step. The library will be the central location for all maker spaces, tools, and each table will be its own design area. And the tables will allow for up to 4 students to work simultaneously on a project or a concept. They can work individually as well. If I action research cycle step 4, so this is implementing and planning, collecting, and analyzing the data. So our students are going to take a pre-survey before they begin their makerspace stations, and it's going to ask them to relay their exposure to the technology being used, the career opportunities that they know that is available to them in that field, as well as their comfort level with that technology and those tasks. This data will be collected and then compared to their post-survey the results that they will make after they have completed their makerspace activity. The post-survey will then allow for students to share if they would consider taking certain targeted STEM classes. Some of those are offered at our middle school. Many are offered at the high school that they will be going to after 8th grade. The data that we hope to collect is that each station will have that pre and post survey. We'll be able to compare those 2 data points. We'll be able to show a direct correlation between the exposure to the technology and to the software, and then how their engagement has bloomed or blossomed. The survey will specifically focus on the technological components, as well as possible careers, thus providing specific points of data that we will focus on. The survey would be constructed in a way that would allow for specificity in the skills that the students learned, as well as exposure to the technology and future career pathways. The research would determine if the students to these components during library time has influenced them to any potential change that they may have from beginning the makerspace activity, like if they are now interested or focused on learning a career pathway that they have not yet or had not learned up to this point. Right. Now we are going to be doing step 5, our action research, communicating our results. So our students have been appraised of the grant funding and our maker stations that will be made available shortly. They're excited for the opportunities that await them. We are documenting these learning experiences through our social media platforms, which will showcase student creations as well as hands-on learning, and that will equal engagement. So stay tuned to see what products and creations our students create. We're excited for these next steps.
Hi, my name is Jesse Lucas. I'm the physics and engineering teacher at Pikeville High School, and my innovation grant was called BattleBots. So the problem of practice that I was investigating was, can creating a project like the construction of a BattleBot be an effective team project that can cross multiple engineering disciplines and garner more interest in each of these disciplines? So my idea kind of stemmed from robotics competitions. So there's a lot of VEX robotics competitions here in Eastern Kentucky, but I was trying to think of one, what I could do that would cross over more disciplines of engineering, and also what could set my program apart here at Pikeville High School. And when my students were doing the VEX robotics, they talked to me into playing or showing them BattleBot videos while they were making these VEX robotics. And I thought, this is so cool. I think that we could do this. So I did some research, and they actually have some high school leagues. So that's what we've essentially tried to do here. So with the implementation, I decided to go with ant weight BattleBots. So ant weight BattleBots are just 1 pound BattleBots. They're really small. They're not that big at all. And I'm going to use them actually in 2 different classes. So the first class I'm going to talk about is my Principles of Engineering class, which is my 2nd year engineering class. I'm going to let them do more advanced bots, the ones that will take them a little bit longer to put together and they can put a little more thought into them, and then walk through and highlight how they touch the different disciplines of engineering and how you can utilize them in this project and in the real world. And in my Introduction to Engineering Design class, which is the 1st year engineering class, I'm going to let them use the kind of more simple bots. And then I'm going to have them reverse engineer them. So I'm going to have them build them up, make them look really cool, and then say, all right, how can you make them better? And then use their 3D designing skills to actually make their battle bots better. So resources and personnel I'm going to need for this. So I ended up getting BattleBot kits. In the future, I don't necessarily want to just purchase the kits. I'd like to just purchase, the little parts, the wiring. But for now, where I don't know a ton about it, and the kids don't know a ton about it, we're going to learn together and we're going to use the kits. I ended up going through 2 different FingerTech carriers. FingerTech is just apparently the go-to for all little itty bitty products. And you can look on the picture there. I'm talking, these motors are the size of your pinky fingers, at the tip of your pinky finger. So it's actually pretty cool to look at. So while doing research on where I should get some of these, I've actually made some really, really cool connections that I'm hoping blossom into a lot of different things. One of them is Newton's Attic. Newton's Attic is a STEM camp in Lexington, and I reached out to them because someone told me that they do kind of something similar to this with bigger bots. And they're actually going to come here and they're going to help me. They're going to build the arena for me to have the competitions for my kids. They're going to let me use some of their parts, some of their chassis on some of the bigger bots that I'm going to use in different classes. And they've really kind of guided me and helped me through this process, which is just an awesome connection to make. I also, through one of the FingerTech carriers, I met a man named Brandon Kittenridge, who's actually, he owned one of the companies that I bought some of the BattleBot kits through, but he actually designs the big ones that are on Discovery Channel, the 250-pound bots. So actually getting to talk to him and let him kind of give me advice on what we're doing, and he said that I could pick his brain whenever I needed to. So that's an awesome connection as well. And then actually KVEC, I talked to a couple people through KVEC about maybe trying to get some BattleBot camps during the summer. So maybe we can get that up and going as well. Personnel that I'll need to implement this, really just in the class, it'll be me. But my big idea is my elementary school always has a STEM night. I'd like to piggyback off of that STEM night and make it not just elementary, but high school kids as well. And then have the tournament there. And that way we'll get some publicity, people can see it, and it'll really garner a lot of interest because, I mean, these kids are going to spend a lot of time on these, building them from the ground up. And I think people will be interested in it. So here's 2 of the kits that I got from the robot shop. Now these kits are the more basic ones. You know, they don't have a ton going on, and these are the ones that I'm going to let my students kind of design different ways to make it better. And then these are the other ones that I got off of Brandon Kitten Ridge. And there's all kinds of different ones. There's 4 different designs. All of them have won multiple competitions. So I just got one of each, and I'm just going to let them form teams and build one. So some of the outcomes that I'm hoping for, like I said earlier, just the cross-discipline projects. A lot of times you don't get a lot of different projects that will cross all kinds of different subjects. Well, the tricky part about engineering, especially high school engineering, is there's so many different disciplines of engineering that you often feel like you're leaving one out if you kind of really hyper-focus in on one, and I didn't want to do that. So I tried to pick a project that would go cross-discipline, and they'd be able to kind of see all kinds of different aspects from different engineering fields. And then outcomes, like I said, I'm starting the ant weight, the 1 pound. Maybe in a year or 2, I'd like to move to the beetle weight bots, which are 3 pounds, so a little bit bigger, but not bad. And then I'd like to actually move to the Doge weight, which is 15-pound bots. I think that's where the kids can really get creative and really get going. So that's kind of where I would end up long term. Partnerships, I feel like I've made some awesome partnerships. Like I said, Newton's Attic, Brandon Kitten Ridge, and KVEC as well. And hopefully I can work with them on a couple things. And I'd like to start a league. I've already reached out. Newton's Attic's actually reached out to quite a few schools in Eastern Kentucky. We have one other school that's interested. So I think it would be super cool to start a BattleBots league here in Eastern Kentucky. That could be something that we're known for. And then, like I said, just garnering that interest. Kids will see that. And I think, like I said, I wanted something that would make my engineering program stand out. And I think this is the way to do it. And I think it'll garner a lot of interest for kids that are in high school already, kids that are in middle school, and kids that are in elementary school. They'll see it, and I think they'll think it's really cool and want to do that one day once they make it to high school. Measuring the outcomes. So the pre-assessment that I'll do before it is a lot of just the theory to the applications. They can learn theory in the classroom all that they want, but the one thing that I do like about this is it's very project-based. I mean, it's literally just an entire project. So they can take that theory and move it to the applications, which they don't get a chance to do. And then at the end of the project, I'm going to ask them open-ended questions about what they learned, how they can apply it to real life, what they would have done differently if they would have started from the beginning, things like that. And then polls. I love polling my students to see interest in different engineering fields. And we can actually look at the growth of the program as well. So if I've got 20, I think I've got 25 kids in my first year engineering right now, hopefully by the end of next year, I can shoot for 30 or 35 and really start to grow this program into the juggernaut that I want it to be here in Eastern Kentucky. And yet again, if we have a tournament, we can look at the tournament. Were these bots actually able to compete? Were they able to do what they needed to do? So I think that would be a really cool way of assessing whether they got out of it what they needed to get out of it. And I think it's super easy to directly associate the skills they learned to this, because this is kind of the only project where they're going to have that's as in depth as this one. Hi, my name is Jesse Lucas, and my grant was called Newton's Playground. So essentially, my problem of practice for this was, can using wireless simplified sensors increase the efficiency of a lab and therefore lead to more learning and deeper thought about data? So the way that I run my classroom is very Newtonian. Which means I'm not going to be giving a lot of my students the information directly. A lot of times I'll start my unit with a lab, and they'll derive the equations that they're going to use in the unit based on the data that they get from the lab. So the problem that I have sometimes, though, especially with the old equipment that I had, was the students would get so bogged down trying to figure out the procedures of the lab that they really got lost, and they lost sight of the important aspects of the lab, which were the data analysis and finding out what does this data mean and what can we learn from this data. So really, I wanted to figure out a way to use less time on the procedures and then maximize my time on the analysis, because it will only pay dividends later for my students. It'll help them in a lot of different areas. One of the major ones, at least in a high school setting, is with test scores. So with the ACT, it's all data driven. And so is the junior science assessment that they have to take. A lot of it is very data driven. They're just going to look at data charts and they have to interpret the data themselves. So being able to do these labs and focusing less on the procedures and more on the analysis will only help them in the testing setting. It'll also help them in real life after they leave high school. I tell my students all the time, I don't necessarily care if you're going to go into a STEM field, but you still have to be able to look at information and interpret what it means and how you can use it. And that critical thinking and data analysis mindset that they can gain from this could be super beneficial for them well beyond the classroom setting. To implement this, what I decided to do was try and get Vernier LabQuest 3s. So essentially what these are, it is something that you can plug your sensors into and you can use for pretty much any lab. So I already have a lot of the sensors that I need for it. But the old thing that they would plug into was it wasn't very efficient. So I didn't have to buy any sensors. I just had to buy these LabQuest 3s. I can use them in nearly any lab that I have, regardless of if it's in my physics class or my engineering class, which I also use Vernier sensors for as well. So a couple of the examples off the top of my head is a forces lab and a momentum lab. Now, with an example of the labs, if I really zone into Newton's second law, so if you don't know already, Newton's second law is force is equal to mass times acceleration. So my students would start the unit by getting a ramp with a car on it, and they'd set up photo gates to track how long it would take the cars to move down the ramp, and they could use that to calculate the acceleration down the ramp, and then they know the mass of the ramp. And then they can chart the different relationships to see what the best graph is for the relationship between force, mass, and acceleration. So before I had this LabQuest 3, they actually had to use a spring scale to find the force down the ramp. If you don't know what a spring scale is, it's exactly what it sounds like. You just get a scale or you get a spring and you hang your car from it to see how far it goes down. And that's one of the biggest sources of error in the lab itself. And then the photo gates that I use, they're very old. I actually got them from another teacher when I got here, and I'm not going to lie, they're a little bit sticky even, so they're not very good. But I did purchase these new sensors with it, with some of my classroom budget now that I got the LabQuest. But the old sensors, you got to click 3 different buttons to collect the data. And if you misclick the order of the buttons, you'll lose all the data you have. Or it's easy to accidentally click them in the wrong order and think you're getting the data for one thing, but you're actually getting the data for another thing, which just makes it so that there's so many difficult aspects to actually executing this lab well and efficiently. They have to go by the book procedurally. And then once they get their data, they have to manually type it into Desmos, which is a graphing calculator. It's a really nice skill to have, but I would rather them focus, at least in my class, on interpreting the data and not graphing the data. But now, after I have it now, really, I don't have to use a spring scale anymore. I have a force probe that I can connect to the LabQuest. It'll automatically read the force down the ramp, and it'll give it, I think, to the hundredths place, which was overwhelmingly better to the ones place or to the every even numbers place, like the spring scales I have right now. And all the photo gates are connected to LabQuest. So the students won't have to press any buttons, and it will automatically read the data points, and it will give them the graphs. So they don't have to focus on that other collection of data. They can just get the data from the LabQuest and then look at the graphs, interpret it, and then move on. So some of the possible effects that I think can come from this lab, one of them, like I've said multiple times, faster, more efficient labs. If I can have faster labs that don't take 3 and 4 days to do, especially when I have a class. Right now I have a class of 27 kids. It's pretty difficult to let them get through those labs. I'll have more time for other things, which is awesome because we lost a lot of time for content this past year. So we've really got to try and make up for it and accelerate these kids the best that we can. It'll also help with the data analysis skills. I've already hit on that a little bit, but I think, not only does it help with test scores, but it reaches outside the classroom as well. Technology skills, which I know the students have gotten a lot of this in the past year and a half, but the more exposure to technology, the better the students are going to be. And especially in a world where technology is completely taking over everything, the more experience they have, the better they'll be. And then collaborations actually as well. I think once I start figuring out how to use these LabQuests really, really well, I can branch out and see if the other teachers want to use it. I know the chemistry teacher, you can buy different probes for the LabQuest. And I know the math department, they could use the data that I get for some other project, whether it be Algebra 1 and it's graphing data, or if it's a statistics class and they can use that data to find statistics with it. So I think the possibility of having collaborations with it is pretty neat. Resources and personnel, really just the resources I need are the Vernier LabQuest 3s. I already have some of the sensors. I'm already in the process of buying some more with my classroom budget because I think, it's a game changer. And I plan on buying more LabQuests and sensors in the future when I get the money. And then, like I said a minute ago, the personnel, physics and engineering classes, those are my classes right now. There's also another physics teacher here that I'll absolutely let use the sensors. The math teachers could use it. The chemistry teachers could use it. So the sky's the limit, I think. To see if it's a success or failure, a lot of this, you've really just got to go by the data. And for the data that I'm going to look at previous standardized test scores for each grade and compare. So I'm going to look at each class after they make it through me, and I try and use these new approaches on these labs to see if their data analysis gets better and therefore their test scores go up. And then trends on the ACT score, just the same. So the test scores, the state test scores, and the ACT scores. And then I can also formatively assess it with just observations. I mean, I'm in this class with these kids every single day. So and I've already taught the class for a couple of years, so I already know kind of the trajectory that they're on. But hopefully with this, I can see them reaching higher and hitting new limits that other students didn't quite do. And then I can kind of gauge their critical thinking and reasoning skills that are tied to data analysis. And like I said, again, quicker units equals more content. So being able to see how far I can get in the year after it saves me 10, 20 days, that's really kind of cool. And to see I can teach new content that I've never been able to teach. So I'm really excited about that as well. And then summative, it would be really easy for me to use these to collect my own data and then incorporate them in the assessments. Right now, it's quite hard for me to kind of get organic data and put it on the assessment because of all the hurdles I have to jump through. But now that it's super easy, it would be much easier for me to put some of these data analysis questions and some of the higher level data analysis questions on my assessments. And how I know the correlation is going to equal causation. So the ACT scores at my school recently dipped a little bit. A lot of people say it's due to COVID. It doesn't matter to me. They dipped, and that's what matters to me. So I'm going to do everything that I can to try and get them back up. So with claim, evidence, reasoning, that's kind of the approach that the science department's tried to take. And this is only going to help and improve that, that strategy. And it's the only major tweak we're making in the curriculum. So I think that any real growth in this will come from CRE, and in return will come from this new approach to labs. And like I said, watching the individual growth, I can just formatively assess these kids and see how they're doing. So I can see the critical thinking skills from past students compared to my present classes and see how well they're growing.
Hello, my name is Stephanie May. I am from Belfry High School Area Technical Center. My topic for the KVIC grant was whiteboard tables in the health science classroom. Where did my innovation for transformation come from? We know that healthcare requires effective communication in order for efficiency in a care regimen to be established. We also know that within our health science pathways in high school, these are industry-led classrooms. So by the time that these students finish their senior year, they are certified Medicaid nurse aides, and they are able to assume a job within that capacity. So what happened is I visited the classroom of a colleague. I seen her tables. She was not in a health science classroom, but I became very intrigued, and I wondered, could I use that same technology or that same whiteboard application of tables within my classroom itself? So as I began to check the prices of these whiteboard tables, I began to see that they were, quite a few $100s a piece, maybe $300 to $400 for each whiteboard table. And I knew there would be no way financially that we would be able to sustain that. So I also began to embark with her upon a collaborative learning opportunity. I wanted these students who are going to be future healthcare professionals to learn how important it is to collaborate together and to work together on one common theme. The biggest question that I had was, how can I incorporate best practices with hands-on application and collaborative learning, all while students are reaching their industry certification standards? So we know that there will be obstacles that we will face. One of them is going to be using those tables within the classroom and making sure that students have an understanding of how they are to collaborate together. How will we overcome these obstacles? And will this change, will this different route be the best route for our health science students? As far as the materials list, I collaborated with my peer teacher, and we came up with a list. Of course, our lumber value was going to be around $500. Those of you that know how lumber prices have soared after COVID might be scoffing at that, but we're hoping that we can get this project accomplished with all 9 of the tables that will be required within that financial frame. The shower board, which is much cheaper than buying the dry erase board, we will get it for a whole lot cheaper. So we may be able to take some of that $200 that's allotted for those and move it up into our lumber to increase the amount that we would be able to spend for our lumber. Our hardware would include the nails, the screws, and the Loctite glue that we would use to adhere the Marlite to the plywood on the tables. The $100 we allotted for the markers and the cleaners, the Expo erasers, and then the miscellaneous would include the caddies. I don't anticipate that those supplies will cost that much, so in the event that the lumber is more than the $500, we can rearrange that funding in order to hopefully reach that financial quote. I'm planning on making sure that our ATC is very involved in this opportunity for our students. Mr. Daniel Carter is our teacher at the carpenter shop, who will be working along with the students as they construct the tables and as they deliver them to us. So the goal is for us to have 9 of the 5x30 tables to add to our health science classroom. And as you've seen in the picture earlier, we have several tables already in the health science classroom, but they're a little bit of a hodgepodge in shape. Some of them are not in good condition, so they are really in need of repair. As far as the research goes, I did look at some information, and my big thing was making sure that students were able to have somewhere where they could have small collaborative groups so that they can increase communication. So the information that I came up with demonstrated that if you're pairing your verbal and your written information together, along with your visual information, that you are increasing your recall comprehension. So there was a study that I had found that was completed by a Daniel Oppenheimer and a Pam Mueller. They were from Princeton and UCLA respectively, and they wanted to test students for their factual, their detail, their conceptual comprehension. So what they did is they took a group of students, they gave half of the students, they gave them technology, such as laptops. The other half, they gave them the option to write their information. What they came up with and what they found was the students who wrote their information by hand performed higher and better than those who used technology devices. So they had a stronger conceptual understanding than the group who used the technology. So where does this fall into as far as how this is going to be beneficial within a nursing or a health science classroom? The whole goal is, as you can see in this picture here, the students were going to be collaborating on infectious diseases. So all the information that they were comprising took up one whole page. If the student here would have had a whiteboard table, they would have started this information, and as they switched tables, students would have been able to have added to that information without having to add another sheet of paper. So on the whiteboard itself, they could have added that information. Also, when we think about how whiteboards are essential or are useful in the healthcare realm, whiteboards are used in many of the nursing stations in order to tell the staff where their assignments are going to be for the day. Whiteboards are also useful at the bedside because they do bedside report. So whenever the group goes in to receive the report, the information is written on the board beside the patient, the resident, with all their information. It's got their name, their doctor, who the nurse is, and any pertinent or important information that may need to be known about that individual. So the students are going to learn how that plays into communication as well. Our outcomes will hopefully be measured during our spring semester when we begin with our emergency procedures course. Students will be learning a wealth of information about how to care for individuals who are maybe experiencing a myocardial infarction, maybe an individual who has sustained a life-threatening injury to one of their limbs, which has caused some hemorrhaging. And they're also going to be learning how to do CPR. With our standards, they are able to take notes as they transfer from station to station. So they may have one table that will be for the respiratory portion. The next table might be for the compression station. The next table might be for the infant information. So as they go to each table, if the people before them have written down their information, that's going to be readily available to them. They're not going to have to carry around paper pencil with them to each one of the stations. It will be available to them through the whiteboard, as well as the markers and the erasers that are there as well. Our accomplishment hopes to be to eliminate, if you see, here's the markers that the student is using. Here is the assignment that the student is working on, and here is all of the paper information that the student has. We hope to have 9 of the 5-foot by 2.5-foot tables, and those will go together to form a 10-foot by 2.5-foot table. We will place 2 students at each table for a total of 4, with the back side remaining open. That allows for another group to come around and collaborate with the students as well. So hopefully, we will be eliminating all of this extra paper and all of this extra material that the students will be carrying with them. Here at our high school, we have been very blessed that we are a one-to-one classroom. So yes, the students will continue to use technology within the classroom. They will be able to use those technological devices on the whiteboards themselves. And they will be able to transfer that information that they're learning onto the whiteboard. So instead of them collaborating with others through, let's say, a group assignment on Canvas, they would be able to put their information on the table. And as they switch to go to a different location, that information will stay right there. It also would make it a lot easier as students are completing bell ringers and exit slips, maybe even for quick quizzes. You're going to eliminate the need for paper because they can write their information on the table. It can be erased and be ready for the next class.
All right, so my name is Justin Smith. I'm a first year teacher at the Floyd County School of Innovation here in Floyd County. And my grant proposal project was titled Mountains of Produce. It is a raised bed gardening project that I hope to start here at the school and carry on throughout the future. So my inspiration for the project, I really wanted to think of something that I could give the students more of a hands-on learning feel. And so definitely throughout this raised bed gardening project, we'll be able to have plenty of hands-on learning opportunities for our students that they can directly tie back to our classroom instruction component of agricultural education. Also, food deserts. Many communities in Eastern Kentucky can be classified as a food desert because you have to drive so many miles to get to a grocery store or to find fresh produce. Of course, new local farmers markets are helping with that, but teaching these students how to grow their own food using raised bed gardens is a really functional way and a cheaper option than having a huge garden. And you can do a raised bed garden right in your backyard or even sometimes like on your porch. I also wanted to give our students a sense of ownership and pride in a project that they complete. And what better way to do this than have them grow their own food and get to see this project kind of flourish over time. The purpose for the project, I also wanted to work through teaching a work ethic along with our standards. So obviously, as teachers, we're working to make sure our students are on track with their standards. And sometimes work ethic can be a hard thing to teach students, especially in today's world. And gardening really takes a lot of patience, hard work, and dedication to get through it. And so through this, I'm hoping my students will be able to gain some work ethic and also progress through their standards in agricultural education. Again, provide hands-on learning. That's one of the three components of agricultural education, being classroom instruction and with the hands-on learning. Students really like to be engaged in the classroom, and my goal is to create an engaging environment for my students to learn and grow in, and this will be perfect for them. Some skills that will benefit students later in life, gardening, especially growing your own food. You can't beat a fresh garden, vegetable of any kind, and so definitely this will benefit them in the future. They can take this on their own, start their own garden, or continue working in the gardens here at school if they are an underclassman. So how the money will be spent. I plan to use the grant money that we've got to purchase materials for the raised bed garden. I would like to purchase one that's kind of prefabricated. As we are a first year agriculture program, we don't have a ton of means of actually buying lumber and building our own. Plus, wooden raised bed gardens kind of break down pretty fast. Typically, the life on those is around 10, 12-ish years. So if we get one that's galvanized steel or something, it'll be super easy to move if we need to move it around the school grounds from time to time, and definitely super easy to put together, but still give students the sense of they built this because it will, come in pieces. So we'll have to navigate that. I'd like to buy some beginning gardening tools. We've got shovels and a couple of different rakes here, but some smaller hand tools would be good for a raised bed garden. You don't really want to get in there with a huge shovel, start to beat and bang around on galvanized steel if we get that type of garden there. So some beginning gardening tools would be nice. Seeds, soil, and fertilizer, kind of the three main starter things we will need for this garden. Students will be creating a plan, which I'll get to in a minute. So they will decide what crops we're going to grow along with guidance from me. So we'll purchase seeds for that. We'll also purchase raised bed soil from a local store, and then fertilizer to help those plants get started on the right track. And then lastly, I'll spend some money on a water hose and a spray nozzle just to make sure we have one that will reach all the way to the raised bed gardens, which will be in the back of the school. in that location. So want to make sure we have a spray nozzle also, so we can get a nice shower setting. That way we're not spraying water harshly on the plants that will knock them down or hurt them in any way. How I plan to assess student learning outcomes. I plan to assess them through their active participation first in the class with our work in the garden, making sure that all students are engaged and have an active role outside is important for keeping them engaged, and as well as monitoring behavior. If they don't have a job outside, then they're more likely to get into some type of trouble. And so everyone will have a role when we're outside with each class I take out there, and they'll have a specific duty to make sure that they are on track. Students will also be creating the plan, like I said previously, for the raised bed garden. It'll be their job to kind of plan out what we're going to plant, where we're going to plant it, and make sure and research when we need to plant that. So next up, there'll be marketing and selling vegetables at farmers market or back to the school cafeteria. We are hopeful to get a container farm from App Harvest, and so therefore we were working to try and start farm to table type of program with our cafeterias. And so once we get that up and running, we may sell these vegetables back to the school, or if that's not an option, then we will take these to local farmers market and have students come out and sell those too. Part of the marketing would be on social media, sharing posts, creating a post, kind of working it like you're in charge of a local business. How would you spread the word on your product, which will be super useful because many of our students are in different pathways that are already working on some entrepreneurial skills. And so marketing a product is definitely something that is cross-compatible with other pathways as well. And then lastly, instead of having a standardized test or something that they would take, I plan to do a reflection on the project, have them reflect on how it went, what they would change, what they thought they did well, kind of switch it up a little bit. I think sometimes we get too caught up on, well, we need to test them to see what they know. And so I think a reflection will be a nice change. And it still gives you a sense of what did they learn and what do they think they could have gone better. And I'll be able to use that in the future with other groups that do this project as well, or continue on just with the gardens we have.
Hello, I'm Dr. Amber Tackett from Paul G. Blazer High School, where I teach art for the Ashland Independent School District. And my presentation is on the creative problem solving in 3D. So my problem of practice is that students often are hesitant in creative thinking. They are afraid to fail. They're afraid to try new things in a lot of cases. And so I was curious if implementing a more tactile and practical application, not just in art, because that is both tactile, but if I could show them that the skills that they acquire in my art class, creative thinking, the process of making and problem-based learning, that if that would help if I added a new technology to the mix with 3D printer. And so that's the problem I am trying to address with this project and with this grant. And so my research questions are, does the 3D printer help students become more engaged in the creative process? And secondly, do students exhibit creative problem-solving skills through innovation of new products or solutions? And so through these two questions, I hope to see if adding the element of the 3D printer to my already existing process and creative skills teaching, if that will help students further grasp creative problem solving, and if they can also not be as hesitant or afraid to try new things and to be innovative, to be creative, to not be afraid to fail, at coming up with solutions, because that's the only really good way to come up with good solutions, is through actually trying and trying again, much like any inventor has done in the past and in the present. So getting started, I am completely new to 3D printing. I have had no prior knowledge other than I know that other people in my district and even in my school have utilized it, and some of my students have, but I am completely new to it. So getting started has been a lot of trial and error. I did go ahead and buy the 3D printer, though I am waiting on the computer part of my grant. But luckily, the printer has some built-in features that allow you to do some test prints within it. And so I've done some test prints. I've been doing a lot of adjusting of the filaments and of the temperature to try to get a good print. And I've had many failed attempts. As I just said, sometimes you have to fail to keep trying. So I want my students to be able to have the same kind of mindset to be daring to try something new, to learn through making adjustments, through solving issues, through doing research. I've done a lot of research into YouTube videos, trying to find any information I can about how to adjust and make the printing process better. I've been doing a lot of research of how to problem solve these certain issues, like under extrusion and proper bed temperature so it doesn't stick to the bed, and all of these things that I'm trying to do on the front end to make it a little easier for my students moving on with the process. So I've also done some research in addition to like just problem solving how to even do 3D printing with the specific 3D printer I bought, which is an Enter 3 Pro. I've also done some research on what the extant literature is saying about creative problem solving. And so I found two articles, one by Olger in 2018, which said problem-based learning has been shown to increase both creative and critical thinking in students. So in doing what I want to do, I've got to create some sort of problem, according to the research, that is not just, hey, design something cool in 3D that we can 3D print, but that I involve some sort of problem-based learning with that. And then I also find a Yildirim article, also from 2018, that did a study with teachers, case studies with teachers who have implemented 3D printing in their classroom, because I was just curious what other teachers have said about implementing this technology in their class. And it's increased, according to the teachers, permanency, effective learning experiences, participation, which are all things that are key signs of engagement. And so I was hoping for that. So I hope to find the same in my own students. And that it has also had a significant effects on students' attention to the course, their interest in the course, improving their imagination, increasing attendance, bringing materials, and developing activities by doing and experiencing. And so these are all great things that have come out of other teachers' experience with 3D printing. And so I'm also hoping to find similar with mine. And I already can tell you that just having the 3D printer sitting in my room and occasionally printing something, students are like, ooh, are you figuring it out? Are you getting it to work? Are you seeing what's happening? Are you have you figured it out? When are we going to use it? So that I have all this excitement that's kind of building around just the fact that I have the 3D printer sitting in my classroom. And so that brings me to the action plan, which is what am I going to do between now, so November and March. So I've already been playing with the 3D printer. I believe I've got it to a good setting that will be sustainable enough to make 3D models with my students. And so the next course of action is what I will be talking about next. And so the next thing is to start with creative problem solving without necessarily talking about the 3D printer or involving the 3D printer. And so I'll be talking soon about Leonardo da Vinci in my classes. and how he was an inventor and how he did creative problem solving. And so I found on PBS's website this really great lesson plan on endangered species. And since that's a pertinent problem in our world, have students come up with creative solutions for a particular endangered species. And so on the lesson, it has a video that talks about specifically sea turtles. And so it kind of walks students through the process of creative thinking. And so then they will choose ultimately their own endangered species off the list and come up with a creative solution for the reason that particular species is endangered. So how can they problem solve and think creatively? And so I'll be walking them through the process of problem solving here pretty soon. And then after that, I'll need to introduce them to 3D design software. And so I've been looking at several different options, one of which is because most of my students will have access to Chromebooks, actually pretty much all of them have access to Chromebooks, I will use Tinkercad likely because it's a free online platform that then we can download and then use the laptop I am getting from the grant to use a slicer program to change it from the format that Tinkercad does it into the language that the printer runs it in. And so they'll be using that, and I'll teach them how to fix the types of files so that they can see how that process works, that sometimes you have to go from one type of file to another to do the 3D printing. And so I'm going to keep exploring other options, but this one is free and it is online based, which is really useful since students have Chromebooks and not necessarily laptops that we can download actual big scale programs to that are out there and available. So we'll be starting simple to begin with. So I'll teach them how to do that. They'll be doing various different projects with that. And then ultimately we'll do another creative problem solving lesson where they actually do a 3D model of their invention that can solve that particular problem that we addressed for that. So once we do that and we get the products, then I'll be doing the data analysis section. So I'll observe and do some field notes for how they're engaged with the problem, how they're engaged with the problem-based learning, how they are thinking creatively. I'll also do an analysis of their projects, so the final product. So in their solutions, so whether that's on paper through brainstorming or whether that's through the actual final 3D model, I'll be analyzing their creative problem solving with those products and the process as well. And so that concludes this portion of my presentation. And I really look forward to actually conducting this research and seeing what types of creative solutions my students come up with and see if they can get over that fear and hesitancy of taking risk and thinking creatively and not being afraid to fail and coming up with solutions, just so they can keep and learn to persist through that failure and learn to become creative and innovative thinkers, because it is a 21st century skill that many fields are looking for in future employers. And so hopefully come spring, you guys will see some really cool 3D printed products from my students.
Hey, my name is Joanna Thompson. I'll be going over the blacksmithing and welding entrepreneurship program we're trying to get started. Mainly we've started with blacksmithing, but we're trying to get the welding incorporated with the blacksmithing. So it kind of merges the programs together so the students can actually build a lot bigger projects, sculptures, have the opportunity to sell, to just create different things, maybe for a garden, for metal sculptures, things that they can actually use as far as like hooks and weld them together to actually make like coat hangers, plant holders. Sky's the limit on what they can make, but that's pretty much the plan for them to come up with a plan to have a business, so they're making what they want to make. Steps in building a metals program. So we've already started the blacksmithing, which is part of the metalsmithing process. Introduce more tools to forging and welding. Invite guest craft artists to demonstrate and work with students. So we've done a lot of that. We've had pretty much Bob Montgomery, and there's Emerald. We've invited him to come and work with the kids. They've both been really great. This is going to engage the students into kind of planning their forms, simple forms, trying to work with them. So that way they're starting to get an idea of the technique of blacksmithing and welding as well. Also to have the proper PPE, protective equipment on them so that they're not getting their eyes hurt or, getting sparks and their hands pretty much hit with the sparks. So that way that they can have that. So a lot of the money will kind of go for that and also some of the equipment. But start showing students how to set up and sell products at festivals and local shops, and then have the students develop a business plan. I could develop it, I could tell them how to do it, but I want them to brainstorm and come up with a way to actually implement their skills to, that way that they're actually going through the details of what they need to do. But also, his metals for everybody? No. I mean, some of the kids, they're like, no, I just don't want to go out there and do that. And some are very much for it. They want to learn. When the blacksmiths show up, they're ready to be out there learning the process. So it will probably be a handful of students that will probably, continue with this program and actually make it a success. There is the Black Gold Festival at the Art Station. We've already done a pottery sale down there. That's where I'd like next year to incorporate more of the blacksmithing, maybe woodworking. And then Thursdays on the Triangle in downtown Hazard. Apple Shop in Whitesburg is also a good place to be for festivals, and then local shops show work around town. So far, we've had Shenanigans, the restaurant, sell a lot of drawings and paintings for the kids. So we just started that. And then development of students, focus on a group of students to mentor, who'd be motivated, who are, they're strong at doing what they're doing with this. They want to learn. That's the kind of students you can mentor and actually learn the processes. Meet with students twice a week and build shelf stands to display work on at festivals and local shops. Have the kids, actually there working with those, so they understand the process of building shelves so they can display their work. And then I want to show you examples of student work, and this was in September, so this hadn't been too long ago, but this is working with the forge. And then here's to the artist. Here's Emerald, or Emmett. And then here is Bob Montgomery. So there he's just showing them how to get the forge going, the first steps, and how to set up everything. And then when you go back, you kind of look, this is one of our students, and she's learning how to actually the process of, bending the metal, heating it up, and just learning from Bob how to pretty much shape metal. And that's part of it. And that's the first steps to learning, as well with, welding with everything.
Hi, I am Emily Warren. I am a teacher at Johnson Central High School. This is my 13th year and my 8th year with our theater program. And today's presentation is Caviar Taste on a Fish Stick Budget. Story of one struggling drama department's frustration and determination. So the problem really came to light in 2019 when we were preparing for Shrek the Musical. Both to our advantage and disadvantage, the kids had access to the Broadway version of the show on Netflix. So kids dream big, but creative kids dream really big, and they wanted professional looking costumes. But we have a minimal budget. So this is an example of one thing that they wanted to make. Here, this is the fairy godmother. and they knew we couldn't afford to rent them. So each petal, they went ahead, they went on, but each petal was hand cut. There was over 200 of them. Stiffened, they figured out that spray foam insulation would stiffen the fabric to a point that it would no longer move. They laid it in a form that they created to get the correct dimension to it, and then they painted every one of them by hand. So they already show that they're very resourceful, but here's the problem. We were so close, but so far away. We didn't have the equipment to finish the project. Okay, so instead of being able to sew the petals on as they needed to, they had to attach them with glue. And thankfully, the costume saw it through. It made it through to the last performance. It didn't make it any further than that. After every show, there were alterations. I don't think the fairy godmother could even sit down backstage. So without destroying her skirt. So it was a lot. Sadly, I don't have any pictures. Because Sprint lost all of my pictures on my phone, not bitter, and we threw it out afterwards because it was falling to pieces. So that brought my research question to light. Does providing students with the proper tools and technology encourage them to become problem solvers? We all agree that most people would tell you that sewing units are viewed as antiquated and unnecessary. I think we all agree that teaching kids to type on a typewriter would not be a necessary skill at this point. But everyone agrees that kids still need to learn how to type. What about sewing? And the simple answer is yes, we need to teach them. Megan Brenneman, who is an FCS teacher, brought sewing back to her classroom. And in her article, she talked about the fact that sewing promotes a lifelong skill. It's a great stress reliever. It's going to save them money one day, debunks gender stereotypes. It teaches resourcefulness. It grows confidence, encourages creativity, builds patience and perseverance, and develops problem-solving skills. From teaches resourcefulness down, those are all really big components of theater. And so if teaching sewing is going to help encourage these, then it's definitely something we need to be doing. Martha Stewart, who we've all heard of, says that sewing is good for developing hand-eye coordination, learning mathematical skills, mending clothes, planning and prep, exploring creativity and accomplishments. So resources needed. Personally, I had forgotten everything that went into sewing. Not just sewing machines and thread. We needed sewing machines, fabric, thread, seam rippers, bobbins, a serger, patterns, pins, needles, pin cushions, and measuring tape. And here is my guest of honor and my sanity and my choreographer and my costumer, Sandra Arrowwood, who is now a master seamstress volunteer from the University of Kentucky. She is amazing. It seems like anything she does just turns out amazing. So she will be using or spending some of her volunteer hours with us and creating these costumes. So this is going to be the start of our grant. I've been doing ELF. We do ELF every year as a fundraiser for our spring show. And we are still on the original Buddy costume. We're still on the original Santa costume. Like, they're all holding up great, except for the North Pole elf costumes. We cannot figure them out. So we're hoping that this will really work for us here in the future. So these are aprons. The kids are going to learn some resourcefulness and some, creative problem solving, because we could not find an apron that looked exactly like this, for a pattern rather. And they are going to make some alterations to it, but they are going to work on sewing these from scratch. Hopefully, because it is an apron, that it will work in all years to come, because it can be, fit just about any student. And because they will be stitched by us with Mrs. Arrowwood's help, I know they are going to last, because they will stay together. Past December, we will do more sewing to, keep on with the grant. I do not know at this point what it's going to be. We were going to do Newsies, but there's been a hiccup with that. So who knows what the show is, but I can guarantee there will be sewing involved. So how do we measure our success? Okay. Do we have elf costumes for next year's production? Not this December, but December 2022, when we have elf costumes. Did our costumes survive the general wear and tear of the spring costume? Unlike the fairy godmother skirt, did they make it all the way through? And will we be able to alter and repurpose these costumes in the future? Because that's a lot of saving money, is taking things and making changes to it so it works for the show you're in. Okay, statistical data. They're going to complete a survey covering the various attributes of that sewing highlights and how they feel it affected them. Like, did it help boost their creativity and their coordination and their mathematical skills? Did it help with those things? So that will be for statistical data. But so we're going to do that through a Google form. And we want their opinion of having, now they have the proper equipment. So were they able to solve the problems that were presented? It will also allow for graphs, a visual representation of their opinions on how learning to sew impacted their overall learning experience and educational experience. So already, and we don't even have the sewing machines in yet, I have seen growth, I have seen teamwork, and just kids helping each other. They're already working together in anticipation of getting the machines in. It is already doing things in my classroom that I have accomplished before with the teamwork and the growth and everything, but this seems to have done it in the quickest manner yet. So I would say already, even without sewing machines and thread and all of that, we are already seeing a move forward in the dynamics of the class, which to me is a solid win. All right, that is my presentation. Hopefully along the way, you'll get to see some costumes.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Williams, and I am a STEM teacher at Ashland Middle School, and today I'm going to be sharing about Interactive Art Alley. So, as you may know, in the current educational environment, student engagement is very challenging right now. It's more important than ever before that we ensure students are fully engaged and bought in to their learning experiences. So at my school last year, student engagement was at an all-time low. And over the summer, I worked with some of my colleagues, and we decided that we must really do whatever is possible to increase student engagement so that we can overcome some of the deficiencies caused by last year. And so as a technology teacher, for me, that means I'm going to be incorporating new technology into my classroom and providing students with the opportunity to apply it in a way that is authentic and meaningful to them. So the area of focus for this PBL is going to be student engagement and authenticity. So we all know that for students to reach their full potential, they really must be fully bought in and engaged in the process. And they also need to be actively engaged in solving real world problems. Research shows that STEM PBLs provide a way for students to connect with real world situations and challenges while maintaining high expectations and giving them the opportunity to create and while also increasing their engagement. So our plan of action is going to be to partner with the City of Ashland and the Holler STEM Squad to create an immersive and interactive art exhibit in our city. And so we are going to do this through augmented reality, through QR code linked videos, and they're going to be creating geographically restricted Snapchat filters and using some other interactive technologies as well. Furthermore, these experiences will all be compiled into an app that is going to be used to find and interact with the various art exhibits around our city. So in order to create these experiences, students are going to need a variety of resources and materials so that they can implement voice and choice with their project. So we'll be utilizing 3D printers to create and apply QR codes, augmented reality software to create immersive experiences, creating Snapchat filters tied to specific geographic locations, software that will allow students to create an app that can be used by all to locate and interact with the art exhibits, and then video creation equipment and software to record interviews with the artists. Not only will AMS students be working with the STEM teachers at our school, but they'll also be working with the Holler STEM Squad, AKY Urban Art Project Board, and the City of Ashland. Our timeline will run from October through April. Supplies have been ordered, and in November, we will be launching our event. During the months of December through February, students will be collaborating to develop solutions to the problem. In March, we'll be holding an exhibition of learning with AKY Urban Art Project to share our learning. And then in April, we will install the 3D printed QR codes in our alley and officially launch our interactive art alley project. Our desired outcomes are that students will be more engaged in their own learning, and that they will apply their learning to create experiences that increase their awareness of and their interaction with art in our city. As a way to evaluate if we are successful, I will monitor student engagement throughout the lesson to determine if there are any differences between the Interactive Art Alley project and prior lessons. Additionally, we are going to create a survey that will be conducted with city members regarding their awareness of and interest in visiting the city's various art exhibits. And then after the implementation of the project, the survey will be administered again to determine if students were able to increase awareness and traffic to the exhibits. And then finally, students will be surveyed about the project to determine if they feel as though the project choices increased their engagement.
Welcome to Building It Forward, our tiny home initiative. I'm Desi Bolin. Students in this region have been designing and building tiny homes for more than 6 years now, and they just keep getting better and better. I designed this initiative to give students an opportunity to learn real-world skills, to become makers, and to feel a sense of accomplishment when the job was completed. It continues to be one of the most successful projects we've ever developed. We have student-designed and built tiny houses across this nation, from Pismo Beach, California to Williamsburg, Virginia. These teachers and students continue to make me proud that we began this work. Students continue to be passionate about the work and actively engaged in the learning. We designed this project to be sustainable. Each year the homes are built and then they're sold on the tiny house marketplace. Those dollars go back to the schools so that they can design and build another home. This is a project that can be continued into perpetuity, and students across the Eastern Kentucky region can gain lifelong skills as we continue to build capacity for improvement and innovation. Each year, our tiny home builders try new and innovative materials and resources. So I'm going to ask Mr. Danny Vance if he'll talk to you about some of the new projects and some of the new technologies that they're utilizing in their build.
I'd like to talk just a little bit about our Build It Forward tiny house projects and the enthusiasm we have this year. You know, we've sold 23 of these, built and sold 23 of these in the last 5 years. We've got 6 more being built this year. And I guess the neat thing about this is project's grown every year, and schools try to be more creative and innovative, and it shows this year. For example, Knott County this year is building a gooseneck tiny home, which is the first that's ever been done through KVEC. So we're real excited about that one. It actually makes that home with a 28-foot frame versus a 24-foot. They're the only school that we've ever had to use solar, and they've actually put solar on their homes the last 2 years. We've got Lee County that's doing a custom build. There's a lady in Virginia that really would like to have a home built, and Lee County took on the job to build that to her specs. We've got a new school got on board this year with Martin County. They're actually using a totally new technology with their framing of the home. This light pan from Boxvana over in Martin County is working hand in hand with those kids and those instructors over there. That stuff not only introduces the efficiency that's needed in a tiny home, but it's lightweight, it's durable. So we're real excited about the outcome of that home. And then we have our Phelps School. Don Page is the instructor over there, and Don is working actually on his 6th home this year. So He's built 5 and sold them already, so he's really rolling. Then we have Breathitt County, who's on their 4th build this year, and I guess one thing that's unique about them is they used all locally sourced lumber supplies, from their interior walls even to their exterior D-log siding, and I think they're using that again this year. And we actually had the opportunity to visit Floyd County in their tiny home last week, and we're real excited about the outcome of that home. They're using a variety of woods inside that should look really nice. We're real excited about this tiny house project here at KVEC, and the fact that when you can take a trailer into a school in August and roll out a tiny house completed in the spring, and all the opportunities it gives our kids, it's just a great opportunity for those kids in those schools.
And today you're going to be able to hear from the teachers and from the students as they talk to you about their new building plans.
All right, my name is Mr. Booth. I teach here at the Breathitt County ATC. I teach carpentry. And this is Mr. Clyburn. And we've been doing this project now for, this makes the 4th year.
Yeah.
And we've had really good success with it. And so we've started on our 2021-22 tiny house. Got a pretty good start on it so far. And so I'll let Mr. Clyburn introduce himself.
My name's Mr. Clyburn. I've been working here at the Breathitt AT since 2006. Like Mr. Booth said, this is our 4th tiny house. And we've learned a lot. I know the kids have learned a lot over the years, and you know, me and Mr. Booth, we've learned a lot about how to streamline the process, and you know, as we learn little techniques and tricks, we pass that on to the kids, and it's just been a win-win for everybody.
So this year we had $34,996 to start our tiny house with, and which is a dramatic increase from previous years, and we're very blessed to have that cushion, and so it's only going to help us as far as making our tiny house even better this year. And so one thing I do have to say is I have to say thank you to Jerry Smith. He handles a lot of our budget and keeps us from overspending, and so we're real thankful for him. And we're also really thankful to Mr. Mayeb, our principal. We have a fantastic principal here at the Breathitt County Area Technology Center, and we have a great staff all the way around. And our kids, this year I'm very pleased so far with our student participation. It seems like we have a fine group of kids this year, and we've already got quite a bit done so far. So would you like to add anything, Mr. Clyburn?
Yeah, I think the kids this year are great. Last week we went from just a trailer covered with Advantech to we've got ceiling joists up now, and we're ready to start putting wire in the joists and moving forward with the portion of the wiring.
So here we have the first tiny house that we built, and this year we're going to do the same as we have the first year and last year. We're going to use a D-log siding, which I just think for this market, the cabin look is where it's at. I mean, so we're going to do that again. I feel like we've got a really good product the way it is. We'll do some improvements this year, and we'll make it a little more sparkly, I guess you could say. But we're probably going to add a gas insert, fireplace ventless insert this year in the living room. I think that's going to be a really good touch, and I think it'll be definitely a selling point for the tiny house. So
another thing we hope to have, a lot of times when we make a tiny house, we'll recommend a certain appliance go in a certain space. We'll give the model number and everything and how to order it. I'm hoping this year, you know, because we started with that $15,000 grant, and our kids have worked so hard, and we've actually, like you've seen in the previous slide, we're up to $34,000 and something now. So hopefully we'll get the appliances in there, and it's going to be more turnkey than ever before.
We do a lot of our framing, most of our framing actually inside the shop. Unfortunately, we don't have the facilities to build the whole structure inside, but we do as much as possible before we take everything outside. And so we'll frame up the first floor, and then we'll and put it together and sheet it. We'll go ahead and put the ceiling joist in, or the floor joist for the second floor in, and we'll put tongue and groove on that. Then we'll build the walls for the second floor, and actually all the framing members for the roof. Once we get that complete, we'll move everything outside, and we'll put it all together. And typically at that point, within a couple of days, it's under roof and everything's in the dry. So unfortunately this year, due to the pandemic, we won't be able to get our windows and doors until a later time, so we're going to have to make some adjustments for that. So you can see here, this is our budget estimate, and so we're very, very glad to say that our budget is a lot more flexible this year. I'm not going to go through all the details of this, but of course a big expense is our trailer, and you know, that's probably what, typically that's around a fourth of our budget is just the trailer itself. So, but this year with an excess of funding, that's not going to be near the issue. So, would you like to add anything to this, Mr. Clyburn?
As you can see in this little spreadsheet here, we've got the washer dryer combo, stove, refrigerator, AC unit. We always put one of those in it, but this year it's going to have a dual evaporator, so we're able to spend a little bit more money and get better equipment in here and more efficient equipment. Countertops and sinks, we've made those in the past. With this year's budget, I think we'll be able to do that again. We're really excited about it, and you know, like Mr. B said, we're just super blessed to be able to do this.
Even with the increase in funding, we do have to keep in mind that due to the pandemic, material cost is a lot more, and then wait time. So we have to really think forward in the process to ensure that we get everything we need when we need it. So we found that out pretty quick with ordering the windows and the doors with the 16-week wait on the windows.
We normally don't order them probably maybe first part of December. I think we ordered them in January one year, and we called about them, and they said it was going to be, I think, a 16-week wait. So we went ahead and placed the order, and so they should. I don't think they're going to be really late, but we'll probably still have to maybe board up some windows or something and then work on the inside until we get those. And you can see some of our students. I think this is Connor, and he's attaching the 2x4s. There's Connor again.
As you can tell, we've already got the floors. We've already got subfloor on the trailer frame, and Mr. Clyburn's class, he's already pre-wired. He's done a lot of the rough end for the wiring through the floor just to save time later, and also to help decrease the cost of all the wiring. So
that was one of the things that we talked about earlier. We said we had learned. You can see some of the wires dropping out here at the bottom. But we learned that really quick. You've got 4 walls in this small structure, and you've got every circuit that you'd have in a big house. So these 4 small walls have to contain your plumbing, all your wiring, and it gets very busy very quick. So we learned that the more wires that we can put through the floor, the easier, neater, and I'd say more structurally sound.
Mm-hmm. So the students here, they're framing up the walls, the first floor walls. Typically, they just use the trailer frame as a platform to do that, and now they're raising the walls as they frame them. So you can tell they've got the 2 walls up and they've got them braced here. So they're at they've built another wall here, another wall portion, and so now they're putting up a corner on an end wall and connecting them all together. Here in this picture, they pretty much got all of the first floor rough framed, with the exception of the fireplace insert, which will be down here, I believe, on this end. And then we're going to have a pop out over here on the far end for our bathroom vanity. So this is them just constructing a corner wall using the block method. Mr. Cliver?
Here we got Anthony. It was a great opportunity to teach the kids, show them some technology they normally don't get lay their hands on in carpentry or electricity class. But we've got Anthony here running the plasma cutter, and what he's doing is he's making an opening here in the end of the trailer that's going to go, that we're going to feed wires through, and then it's going to go up into the pop out that Mr. Booth's class will construct, and we can bring electricity to our GFCI outlets around the sink, and one circuit's even going to go on upstairs, and it's going to make it just a whole lot easier as far as pulling this wire through the walls and just speed the whole construction phase up. There's another shot. He's
using what type of welder?
That's a plasma cutter. And we got to talk about that in class, how it works. It heats the steel, and then you've got about 80 pounds of air pressure that blows the molten steel out of the way. It's much safer for the kids than using a torch. It doesn't get it nearly as hot. The surrounding metal cools off a lot faster. It doesn't get as hot. And then here you can see, I don't know if you can see that on camera or not, but we actually had to cut, we had to pre-plan a lot of things like cutting holes in the bottom of this metal on the bottom is used to hold our insulation, but you have to cut holes in it in order to have your sink drops, toilet drop, all your plumbing drop through the bottom of the trailer.
Mm-hmm. Well, that pretty much ends where we're at this point. We'd really like to say thank you to KVAC and for the opportunity, mm-hmm. and so we look forward to seeing you guys at the FIRESummit soon, and we look forward to seeing other schools' tiny houses also. Yeah. And it's just a fantastic opportunity for our students especially, and so thank you all very much.
All right, we're back again with the Tiny House Project here at Floyd County ATC. My name's Kevin Woods. I'm the carpentry instructor down here at Floyd County Area Technology Center. And again, we're working on the Tiny House Project, and we've got KVAC, which provides us a $15,000 grant to build the tiny house. And we use energy efficient materials such as low E glass, energy efficient windows. We're using the zip system for the wall sheathing, roof sheathing, and we're using lightweight materials here in the tiny house for the wall covering, which is tongue and groove beadboard. And we've got a little bit to go before we finish. We've started on putting the wall system up in the morning and evening classes, and we've got the insulation all in. We've got to finish up on the plumbing, but a compilation of both classes is getting things done this year.
Hey, I'm Ethan Mills from Prestonsburg High School, and this is the Floyd ATC Tiny House.
I'm very proud of it. We put a lot of work into it. We spent hours pulling this 12-2 Romex and putting boxes up, putting this one up. I did this one myself. It's a GFCI into a receptacle with a switch, and the switch doesn't affect these two. It just affects that lot. I spent a lot of time on that. That was the final thing we did in here before what's next, which is putting up the wall covers, and that's about it. We're pretty much done.
My name is Seth McKinney. I go to Floyd Central High School, and I worked a lot on this tiny house. I put up all the siding. Me and a couple of others did. Put the siding on the inside, but outside, all the way around it. And on the inside, we put beaded pine on the ceiling. On the ceiling, we did beaded pine. We turned the beaded side out. So we've actually stained that. We did stain on the ceiling, and then on the walls, we're working on doing just polyurethane. Just a little switch up, get the different appearance look.
Yeah, my name's Walker Minix. I go to Prestburg High School, and last year working on a tiny house. I'm in electrical. Just learned a lot from pulling wire to hooking up receptacles, and this breaker box back here, hooked that up, and outside with the GFCIs. It's just a really good experience here, and I really enjoyed it. It's a great thing.
My name is Mason Jervis. I go to Prestburg High School, and I'm in electrical with Walker here, and we ran wire from the receptacles, the lights, switches, and into the breaker box.
And back to this breaker box, it's just a really good experience. It's not as complicated as I thought it would be. It's just fun, you know, putting in the little breakers and just hooking up the whole thing and keeping it nice and neat. It's just a really good experience.
My name is Braxton Jude. I'm from Prestburg High School, and I helped stain some of the boards on the roof, and I put insulation in. It's just a great experience to have, a little bit of knowledge what to do on how to work on a house. All around just a fun job.
I'm Alexander Endicott. I'm a second year student in this tiny house. For most of the year, I've learned a lot about it. Learned how to put up siding, insulation, staining wood. It's one of my favorite projects.
And we want to thank KVEC for the opportunity for giving us this project, which gives our kids the experience, the real life experience, and the real life situation of putting a budget together and putting the work in the classroom to work with their hands and putting it to work. We appreciate that. And again, this is the 2021-22 Tiny House Project, and we thank you.
Hello, my name is Stacy Sparkman. I'm the carpentry instructor at the Knott County Area Technology Center. This school has been part of the Tiny House Project from the get-go. We were one of the original 3 schools to get the grant. This is Tiny House number 5 that we're working on this year, and we decided that we were going to do something a little different this year. So number 5 is a gooseneck trailer. It's the first one that any of the KVEC schools have done. I think it's going to be a really interesting project, has been so far. Here you can see we got the trailer into our construction shed, getting everything leveled up. This gooseneck trailer only has a 20-foot main deck compared to our previous trailers that were 24 feet. So seems like we have less space. However, we also have the additional 8 feet of space in what I call the upstairs, or the overhead section that is above the trailer or the bed of the truck that pulls it. So we actually have 28 feet this year instead of 24 feet. First thing after we got the trailer leveled up was that we needed to seal all the gaps that were between the metal sheathing and the trailer frame itself. So here you can see the students using silicone to seal both, or apply silicone to both sides of the gap, and then they are pressing these aluminum pieces that they bent into place so that they dry into the silicone. They also put the wooden floor joist in place over top of the aluminum to help hold it in place until it was dry. Once they had the flashing, or as they were doing the flashing, other students were coming behind them and using self-tapping metal screws to attach wooden floor joists to the metal floor joist. The wooden floor joists are what we're actually going to be attaching our flooring and all of that stuff to. We get the insulation in place. We put as much insulation as we can get to fit in the amount of space that we have between the top of the floor joist and the metal sheeting. And then they installed 3/4 Advantech sheathing over top of that, attaching it with screws to the wooden floor joist. The Advantech, because it's a really good product, and we've used it on all of our tiny houses. Once that is completed, you see the students in this picture marking out wall locations with spray paint. These students in the pictures and the other students in my other class and the BAM students have all had a say in designing the layout of this tiny house. Our project is always led by the students. Mr. Martin and myself are just here to tell them the right way to do it once they figure out what they want done. But they design the layout, they design the color scheme, they do the finishes, they do all of the work themselves. It's a really good project for the kids to learn how to run basically a carpentry project. So once they have all the locations figured out, which you can see by all the spray paint all over the floor, these are the main walls of our tiny house that are up. You can also see the bathroom walls in place. The red areas, the ones on the right indicate where our cabinetry is going to go for the kitchen. The one on the left is where the eating area is going to be. You can see the dark gray square at the end of the right countertops where the refrigerator will go. Also, we have where the stairs are going to go figured out. Our bathroom is all laid out where what's going to go where. The plumbing that had to be under the floor is already in place so that we don't have to do anything else with it. And there is a whole lot more to come with this project. So check us out at the FIRESummit. Check us out in April. Make sure that you see what our students can do.
Hello, everybody. My name's Tommy Judd. I'm teach carpentry here at Lee County Area Technology Center. We're building another tiny house this year. Some of the things the kids are learning is the electrical part of the house. We get the welding involved a little bit later, as far as welding some brackets on for lights and stuff like that, and welding the jacks on. The plumbing, kids help me do the plumbing. There's not a whole lot of plumbing in it, but they are exposed to it. And with what time I have students, if I can expose them to something that may interest them in a job later on, and that's what I'm here for. All the kids seem to like this project. I like it because I can show the students everything from start to finish. They get to see that. They start a project, it's a big project, but over the years, they get to see the changes that we do, the changes that are made in the construction, and then what it ends up as a final project. When it sells, they get to see that part of it also, the entrepreneurship part. And this, with us selling the last one and making, some profit on it to put into the next one, they see that, and that motivates them to go out here and maybe not have their own construction company when they first start, but maybe to think about that down the road. This is, I think, our 5th one that we've built with KVEC. I thank KVEC all the time. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have this project to do. If it wasn't for this project, my students wouldn't see much more than building picnic tables and little small walls and maybe dog houses, something like that. So with this project, we have a lot more money that we can use, and they see a whole lot more of the construction side.
there's no way it's gonna break. I was skeptical at first, but then they started showing us.
This whole thing is incredibly lightweight. Like that big wall right there, 2 men can lift it up easily.
This foam right here, we're the first high school in the nation to get to use it from Boxville.
This is a tiny house that me and my fellow students here have built at Boxville.
So we're basically going to be replacing traditional wood stud framing and metal stud framing with a recyclable material that we manufacture here in America. You can use less people for construction. It's easier on the construction workers because it's not as much weight. It's stronger than wood. It's about 26% stronger than wood and about 15% stronger than metal.
Oh, it's been great. It's opened us to a whole lot of skills like we couldn't get involved in the classroom, and just new technology like this light pan stuff. The first day we got all the walls and the roof put on. The second day was just us putting this metal around the edges and stuff on it. So in reality, we had the whole building together in a day, but you know, we just reinforced it with that metal the second day.
Just like a first strip, we'll run them straight up and down all on the inside, like 16-inch centers, and we'll just cut. You know, just cut through the board and run the wire. And then after that, the drywall just goes over it.
We'd like to thank KVEC. They donated a trailer for us to put the house on. Without them, we couldn't even got here.
And Danny and I are here with Mr. Don Page, and he is the teacher, the carpentry teacher at Phelps High School at Phelps, Kentucky in Pike County. And so we're glad to have you with us today to talk about the tiny house project and how successful you've been at completing. How many have you completed now? 5?
5. This is the 6th one. We sold last year's for $39,500. It went to Richmond, Virginia, and we've kind of duplicated the floor plan a little, but we've modified it some. We've got this one just about in the dry. We got our windows in yesterday. While we were waiting on our siding to go on outside, we started doing the wiring and the plumbing, which is what I usually do during Thanksgiving and Christmas break. But we've actually got a little bit ahead this year. We've jumped in here and got it dried in. And as soon as we get our siding, which should be here the end of the week, we're going to try to complete the exterior before we get all those nails in that siding and stuff before we do the wiring and the plumbing. It's a lot safer that way. We've got several, all the students have helped on one before.
Oh, that's
a lot of these seniors I've got this year were freshmen and took it, as a freshman. But I've got Tate Ward here with me. This is his 2nd year of taking it, isn't that right? 3rd year, and he'll probably have it next year too.
Does he think he might want to go into the construction business when he graduates?
Well, he's already in the construction business. He's already building garages and storage buildings. He builds furniture, farmhouse furniture.
So has participating in this tiny house build, has that helped you enhance your skills?
Yeah, it's taught me a lot, basics to the tricky stuff. Don, he's a pretty good teacher.
Yes, he is.
I paid him to come in here and say that.
Not very often you get an opportunity to go to the vocational school and roll a trailer in August and build a complete home by the spring, is it? And expose those students to every facet of that build. I'm sure that young man, after seeing 2 or 3 of these built, knows every inch of it and how everything's done.
He sure does. And I can actually send him out there to do stuff and not even have to watch. He's pretty good at it.
That might be why your progress is good so far. You got some experienced carpenters there, don't you?
I do. There's even couple of my seniors have helped their dads do some more. I've got some students this year that their fathers are actually carpenters, so they've got quite a bit of experience too.
Well, that's what's so good, I think, too, and with you is that you help those kids develop the passion that they already have about building, and so enhancing their skills, they'll be able to leave your classroom at the end of their senior year and go right out and get a full-time job or make their wives happy by being able to do things around the house. So
exactly,
kudos to them.
I think Mr. Ward here will probably be in the construction business time he gets out of school. He's supposed to build our vice principal a garage here.
Well, that's wonderful, because we certainly need more young people who know how to do things and build things and to fix things and do electricity and the whole 9 yards. Because when you go out and try to hire somebody to do work and building you something, it's difficult to find people, and
yes,
especially difficult to find them in a timely manner.
And I try to preach to these kids every year that you can make a good living at this, a very good living at it, if you're willing to work and take pride in what you do.
And if that's what you enjoy doing, then
exactly.
You have to, if you enjoy the work you're doing, you never work a day in your life. So
that's right.
I'd like to add a couple of things there. You know, we've sold these things nationwide from east to west, you know, and when you talk to people about these projects, they're amazed that we're doing this here in Eastern Kentucky. And, you know, Desi is the one that came up with this whole idea of build it forward and tiny houses. And it's a great idea. It's the best project I've ever been involved with. But without people like Mr. Page, without you and your motivation for this project and your enthusiasm and relaying that to that young man sitting over there, this project wouldn't go. So I just want to thank you for your motivation, your enthusiasm, your participation, and you know, you're on your 6th home and loving every minute of it, I guarantee it. It makes your job so easy, doesn't it?
Sure.
And kids are learning right and left when they can see that thing from the bottom to the top in one school year. Just a great opportunity for you and those kids right there, and we appreciate the way you handle that project in that county, and it's real good.
Well, it's I'm not coming to work every day.
Right.
I'm coming to have fun.
I can imagine.
I think that's great, and I hope, I remember one of the young men who was in, I guess it was your first home build, and we interviewed him, and I remember him saying that when he had kids and when they went to that school, Phelps High School, that he hoped that they could have a project like that, a tiny home project to work on. And so I obviously would love that too, to be able to see that carry on. And that's the great thing about this project, is that when we sell those homes, then that money comes back to your program to help you build the home next year. And so we've seen that grow each year. And so who knows in a few years what we'll be able to see happen, and the funds that will come back to your program to be able to carry on this work, and the technologies and the advancements that these kids will be able to experience. And it's a joy for me to see those students engaged and really loving the work that they do, because I'll bet that even in the heat of summer when they're working, or in the cold of winter like it is today, they're out there working and really enjoying that and being a construction crew. And they couldn't do that if they didn't have you leading the way. So everything rises and falls on leadership, and you're a great leader for this program.